Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back you all. Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto x Moka. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. As the sun was setting it cast an orange glow around the city. Walking through the busy crowd of citizens was a young man wearing white and black sneakers, black pants and an orange hoodie that covered his face from his nose and higher. His hands were stuffed in his pockets and based on his relaxed stance one would think that he was just out for a casual walk before the sun fully sets, but that was not the case at all. His nose twitched slightly and he abruptly changed direction heading towards the park. As he walked by he saw that parents were gathering their children to head home before it got too dark. As he continued to walk his ear twitched and he quickly tilted his head as the sound of a gun going off filled the air. He looked over his shoulder to see the bullet that was heading for his head embedded into the tree behind him. That was rude, the boy commented casually. Why have you been following me? Another voice asked. Following you? Whatever do you mean? The boy asked with a confused frown. I just decided to go for a stroll and then you go shooting a gun at me for no reason. Don't play dumb with me. I know you've been following me. The voice shouted and Naruto stepped to the side to avoid another bullet. How are you dodging these bullets? Who are you? Who am I? The boy repeated as he seemed to contemplate the question. It doesn't really matter. And with that said the boy suddenly blurred out of existence. He suddenly appeared behind a man wearing a typical mobster suit who didn't seem to notice him. The boy silently walked towards the man as he rolled up his sleeve as his right arm began to change. It seemed to have gained a bit more muscle as golden fur covered his arm from his elbow down and his hand morphed until it resembled claws. Leaning towards the unsuspecting man's ear he whispered in a cold voice. Besides, what's the point in telling you my name when you're about to die? The man barely registered his words before a clawed hand shot through his chest, his heart now in the palm of the golden fur-covered hand. The boy drew back his arm as the man fell to the ground dead. The boy dropped the head and pulled out a piece of cloth as his arm returned to normal. He began to clean off his arm. Once the blood was cleaned from his arm he reached into the dead man's pocket and pulled out a flash drive. He stashed it into his and pulled out a cell phone and dialed in a number. Placing the phone to his ear he waited for a moment as the phone rang before someone answered it. Hello? He heard a man answer. Yo, it's Naruto. The now identified boy said. Oh Naruto, how did your job go? It was a success. I killed the target and retrieved the flash drive. Naruto answered, causing the man on the other end to hum in approval. That's good to hear. I have no idea how a spy was able to infiltrate our family, but it doesn't matter. You might want to up the security. I knew that Mizuki guy couldn't be trusted. Naruto stated. Yes, it seems like your instincts were right once again. The man agreed. Seems like it. Naruto agreed as he turned a corner. So any other jobs you want me to do before I get to the house? No, nothing comes to mind. The man said thoughtfully before Naruto heard him make some kind of sound of realization. But there is something that might interest you. Really? Naruto asked with a raised brow. And what might that be? The wife and I decided to enroll you into high school. The voice said rather cheerfully. Naruto suddenly froze in place, his eyes widened and he dropped his voice in shock. Hello? Naruto? Are you still there? Hello Tilda. The voice said but Naruto paid no attention to it. What do you mean you're sending me to high school? Naruto demanded as soon as he arrived home. He was sitting at a table in front of his adoptive family, the Huang family. Fei Hong was his adoptive father. He had short hair and facial hair from above his lips to his chin. He wore a business suit but the most noticeable features were the scars that littered his face from the top to his neck. Sitting next to him was his wife and Naruto's adoptive mother Tenten. She wore an elegant red Chinese dress. Her black hair was tied into two buns with flowery bobs and two bangs framing her face. Next was Ling Ling, their daughter. She wore the clothing of a traditional Jiangshi but without the talisman on her hat. She had black hair that was tied into a ponytail and green eyes. The last was the youngest. His name was Fang Fang. He had black hair and feminine-looking eyes and face, wearing common Chinese clothing. I would think that you would understand such a simple statement. Ling Ling stated casually, unaffected by Naruto's glare. They obviously said that you were going off to school. I get that. Naruto shot back in annoyance before turning back towards the two adults. Why do I have to go to school? Why else? To learn, of course. Fei Hong said as if it were obvious, causing Naruto to slam his head against the table. Again, that's not what I meant. He groaned pitifully. What he meant, Naru-chan, is that we are sending you off to school so you can interact with people your own age. Ten explained. But I hang out with Fang Fang and Ling Ling. Naruto protested before shooting Ling Ling a glance as he muttered. Although, I still don't know how old she really is. Era, don't you know that it's impolite to ask a lady about her age? Ling Ling asked, tilting her head. Perhaps, but this could be a good chance for you to get real-life experience. Fei Hong stated, causing Naruto to roll his eyes. What kind of experience can I get at a school? He asked sarcastically. But Oni-sama, think about the opportunities. Fang Fang said excitingly. What opportunities? Naruto asked as he shifted his gaze to the youngest in the room. If you go to the school, you can search for strong subordinates that could increase our family's strength. Fang Fang said enthusiastically. Strong subordinates? At a human school? No offense, but I find that hard to believe. Naruto said doubtfully. The room was silent before the Huang family burst into laughter. What the hell is so funny? Naruto asked, feeling a little annoyed. Sorry about that, but it seems like we forgot to tell you something. Fei Hong apologized after getting his laughter in control. You're not going to a human school, Naru-chan. Ten explained, causing Naruto to raise a brow. I'm not? He asked hopefully. Maybe he wouldn't have to go to school after all. No, you're going to Yokai Academy. A school that was built for yokai to attend. Fei Hong explained. A school for yokai? Naruto asked, slightly interested. That's right. Ten nodded. In fact, grandfather was one of the school founders. Ling Ling added. Really? Naruto asked, thinking about their grandfather, Toho Fuhai, who was one of the 3 Dark Lords. Yes, I'm sure you can find some powerful allies at a school our grandfather helped build. Fang Fang said. I don't know. Naruto said unsurely. Being stuck in a classroom doesn't sound so appealing. Ah, that's right. I forgot how much our little dog likes to run around in the wild. Ling Ling stated. Who the hell are you calling little dog? You walking corpse. Naruto shot back in annoyance. What a rude thing to say. Perhaps I should kill you and make you join my army? Ling Ling suggested innocently. You want to start something? Naruto asked as he stood from his seat. Enough. Ten said, her usual peaceful expression becoming stern, causing Naruto to sit back down, but not before shooting an annoyed glare at Ling Ling, who returned it with a carefree smile. Listen, Naru-chan, I know you're not really a fan of education. Naruto felt his eye twitch when he heard the other 3 members snicker. But please just try it. Think of it as a vacation. Ten suggested. But I don't like vacations. Naruto whined. Maybe so, but we aren't changing our minds. Fei Hong said seriously. Seeing how Naruto was still reluctant, he decided to go for another direction. Besides, this could be a good opportunity for you. Really? What makes you say that? Naruto asked in a defeated tone. Think about it, a school full of different types of yokai. Think of all the fights you will get into. Fei Hong said, already knowing that the blonde would get into many fights. Naruto blinked as his words registered. Huh, I never thought of that. He admitted as he straightened up a bit. Really? Now you're interested in going? Ling Ling deadpanned. Seriously, when it comes to you, hunting and fighting are the only things that matter. So what, so you say, Naruto? I can guarantee you will find some very strong opponents to fight. Fei Hong asked again as Naruto thought about it. Well, since you guys have pretty much made up your mind already, it seems pointless to argue. Naruto shrugged. So when am I leaving? Uzumaki Naruto, the adoptive son of the Huang family and their top bounty hunter. He was a werewolf, a monster that was unmatched in speed when under the influence of the full moon. Even without the help of the moon, they are one of the fastest yokai in existence. As a ferocious beast-like yokai, he loved for the thrill of the hunt, and engaging strong opponents in combat was his favorite pastime. However, right now he did not look like the powerful S-rank yokai he was. Oh god, *grhak*, someone put me out of my misery, ugh. Naruto moaned as he lay down on his seat, left hand clutching his stomach while his right hand was clamped over his mouth. He was currently on a bus that was heading for Yokai Academy. The only problem was, Gak, can't you drive more smoothly? Naruto moaned as his face began to turn green. He suffered from an extreme case of motion sickness. It wasn't this fault though. He was a werewolf, damn it. He was like a wild animal that was meant to roam free outside, not be trapped in a metal box with wheels. It was safe to assume that the airplane ride from China to Japan, the taxi drive to get to a city where the bus would arrive, and then the actual bus ride was taking its toll on him. There better be some straw-acting opponents. Naruto weakly muttered as the bus made a sharp turn that did not help his stomach in the least. His main purpose for going here was for the chance to fight strong people, so it better be worth the torture he was going through. Better buckle up, kid, the road's about to get bumpy, the bus driver said with a dark chuckle just as the bus began to shake, causing Naruto to release a whimper of pain. He hated his life right now. Come on, Ura-chan, a girl shouted as she got her things together. The girl had shiny pink hair, green eyes full of innocence and happiness, an aura of cuteness and a great figure. Don't rush me, Omid. A girl who looked very much like the now-named Omid. The difference though was while Omid seemed cute and innocent, Ura had a more mature sensual beauty around her. She had long silver hair and exotic red eyes. Today is our first day of high school. Can't you be more excited? Omid whined as she crossed her arms with a pout. Don't worry, Omid. I may look calm on the outside, but on the inside I'm positively jumping in joy. Ura said in a bland tone as she finished up her packing. I don't believe you, Omid said with a glare that was for more cute than intimidating. Ura and Omid were twin sisters who were about to depart on their first day of high school. The school they were going to was Yokai Academy, a school that was made for the purpose of teaching yokai how to coexist with humans. What yokai are they, you ask? Well, the twins just happen to be vampires, the strongest of all yokai. Do you have everything packed? Ura asked, ignoring Omid's accusation. Omid continued to glare a bit before smiling. Yup, good, we won't be here for a long time, Ura said as she took a final glance at their home. Yokai Academy was a boarding school, so they would not be in this apartment for some time. A lot of memories here, huh? I'm almost reluctant about leaving, Omid said as she joined Ura in a final look at their apartment. For the past few leaves they left their family, choosing to live on their own as they attended a human middle school. However, the only problem was that humans did not believe in monsters. So whenever Omid tried to convince others that vampires were real, she was often made fun of. Not only that, but the girls in school often bullied her, jealous of all the attention she got from boys who thought she was pretty. Because of this, her only real friend was Ura. Ura was in the same boat as her sister though. Although her beauty made her popular among her classmates, she would not tolerate anyone who hurt Omid. Because of this, she would beat up anyone who made her sister cry, and soon the students stayed away from her out of fear. And while she was a bit bothered about not having any friends, she didn't care all that much. The only thing that mattered was that her sister was safe. I can't wait. Do you think we'll make any friends? Omid asked hopefully. I don't know. Perhaps, out of the two of us you have always been the friendly one, Ura said with a shrug. One of the main reasons that they didn't make any friends was that humans did not believe in monsters. Since they were going to a school for monsters, that would not be a problem, but they were vampires, so there were chances that their status would scare off some people. You should at least try and make some friend, Ura-chan, the pinkette scolded. She knew that her sister was a bit antisocial. Maybe, but if they're anything like the students of our last school, then they will just be irritating. Ura counted, but when she saw her sister's frown she sighed. But I promise that I will at least try and make friends. That's all I ask for, Omid said with a bright smile that Ura couldn't help but return with her own smaller one. Besides, no matter what, we have each other, right? Ura asked as she grabbed her suitcase. Always, Omid nodded in agreement as she grabbed her bag. Alright, now that this mushy stuff is out of the way, we better go out and wait for the bus, Ura said as she headed for the door. Bus? But I wanted to ride our bikes, Omid said, causing Ura to stop walking. She turned around and looked at her with her arms crossed and an eyebrow raised. Do you not see how bright it is today? Ura asked as she pointed towards a window that showed how sunny it was outside. I didn't think that I would have to remind you how sensitive to the sun. No, you don't. Besides, I'll be fine, Omid insisted, but Ura looked at her disbelievingly. Really? Because I distinctly remember you crashing into an innocent bystander the last time you rode your bike. She deadpanned. You're never going to let that go, are you? I already apologized, Omid huffed. Maybe, but who knows what could have happened. Maybe I almost suffered from brain damage, Ura said as she rubbed her head as if relieving the pain. Stop being so dramatic, Omid said as she crossed her arms. Alright, Ura conceded with a smile. Teasing her sister was always a favorite pastime of hers. But her playful expression was gone and in its place was a serious one. If you really want to ride your bike you can. Just make sure you are careful. Really? Thanks a lot Nei-chan. Omid said with a smile before running out the door. I'll see you there. Ura just stared at the door before turning towards a suitcase that stood by her own. Sighing, she rubbed her head in exasperation. She forgot her stuff. Walking back, she grabbed both bags and proceeded to walk out the door. Once outside, she sat on a nearby bench and waited for the bus. About 20 minutes later the bus showed up. Grabbing both bags, she entered the bus and raised a brow when she saw that other than the bus driver she was the only one here. How odd, she muttered to herself as she walked towards the middle and sat down. The bus started and the moment it did she heard a pained groan coming from behind her. Looking over, she saw that the reason she didn't see anyone else was because the only other person in the bus was lying down in the fetal position looking like he was about to die any moment. She took a moment to study this person. He was a boy with spiky blonde hair. She couldn't see his eyes because they were shut tight. He had a lean muscular build and was wearing the male version of the uniform she was wearing. After releasing another groan of misery, she spoke. "Are you okay?" she asked unsurely. She usually didn't talk to others, but she promised her sister that she would at least try and make friends. The boy opened an eye and she saw that it was sapphire blue. "I am good," he said in a shaky voice, eyes widening as he lurched a bit after the bus hit a pothole. "For some reason I don't believe you," Ura said with a raised brow as she looked at how pale he was. Motion sickness. Oh, once I get off this damn bus I'll be fine. The boy said through labored breaths, causing Moka to sweat drop. This was probably the most extreme case of motion sickness that she ever saw. "I see," was all she said as she turned around. She figured she would leave him alone since it looked like he wasn't in any condition to talk. Sighing, she leaned her head against the window and looked at the passing scenery as she began to think about her new school life. What it would be like she had no idea, but Omid definitely seemed excited. Thinking about Omid sent a strange feeling in her. Her younger twin was always the more social of the two. While Ura was satisfied with just being in the company of her twin, Omid would no doubt try and make as many friends as possible. What happened if she moved on with her friends and left her behind? Unlike Omid, Ura was not as friendly and social. While she was not cruel, she was guarded and private. And while she would like to think of herself as better than the typical arrogance of the older vampires, there were times that she let her pride get the best of her, which would sometimes drive others away. Releasing another sigh, she shook her head a bit to shake away these negative thoughts. "Naruto," she heard someone say. Blinking a bit, she turned around and looked at the blonde boy. He was now sitting up. He was still pale, sweating a little and clutching his stomach, but he offered her a small smile. "What?" she asked in confusion. "My name, Uzumaki Naruto, first year of Yokai Academy," Naruto said between deep calming breaths. Ura just stared at him before offering a small smile. "Hello, Naruto," she said after a brief pause of wondering if she should address him by his name or his family name. Based on his smile, she assumed he wasn't one for formalities. "My name is Akashiya Ura." Aono Sukune was sitting at a bench waiting for his bus. He was an average student with nothing that made him stand out. He had failed most of the high school entrance exams and the only place that would accept him was Yokai Academy. He had never heard of this place before and it was apparently in the middle of nowhere, but since it was the only place that accepted him, he didn't have much of a choice. He finally saw a bus heading his way and stood up just as it stopped before him. "Alright, here we go," he muttered to himself as he stepped into the bus. The moment the door closed, he couldn't help but feel like his fate was set. "So, you're attending Yokai Academy?" the bus driver asked as he took a drag out of his cigarette, his glowing eyes shadowed by his hat. Yeah I am," Sukune answered nervously. "Since when do eyes glow like that?" "Well, you better find a seat. You're in for quite the ride," the bus driver said before releasing a few dark chuckles. "Alright then," Sukune said as he slowly walked away from the man, acting as if the slightest movement would cause him to attack. He looked around, saw that the bus was almost empty except for two other people. One was a girl who had long silver hair and red eyes. She was wearing the female version of his uniform and didn't even look up from the magazine she was reading. The boy had spiky blonde hair and wore an identical uniform as his own. who was currently leaning against the window sleeping. Shrugging to himself, he walked towards them. They were both sitting on the left side of the bus, so he took a seat on the right, which was next to the girl. The girl was beautiful, he noted, and he thought about striking up a conversation, but he never had luck with pretty girls before. Besides, she seemed too engrossed with her reading. So he opted to stay silent instead of taking the risk of making a fool of himself. Uhura found herself rather enjoying herself at the moment. After their introduction, the two of them began to engage in idle chit-chat. She wouldn't have categorized them as friends, instead they were something like friendly acquaintances. But who knows? If things continued this way, then she may have made her first friends outside of her family. Pretty soon she noticed how he was struggling with his motion sickness. Grateful that he was trying to remain awake to give her some form of company, she told him that if he wished he could rest up and sleep for the remainder of the trip. He sent her a grateful smile before passing out. Seeing as she had nothing to do, she pulled out a magazine and began to read its contents as a way to pass time. She heard the door and noticed that a rather plain boy with brown hair and brown eyes walk in. He had a brief talk with the bus driver before taking a seat adjacent to hers. She briefly thought about talking to him but decided against it. She promised Omit that she would try and make friends, and she already did with Naruto, and seeing as she was a very private person, she thought one friend would be best for now. So she would wait and see how things went with him before even thinking about making another friend. "You kids better get ready," the bus driver announced, gaining everyone's attention. "Expect for a sleeping Naruto's. See that tunnel over there? The moment we exit it, we'll be in front of the school." Hearing this, Uhura closed her magazine and placed it in her bag as she waited. She glanced at the brown-hair boy and noticed that he fidgeted in his seat every now and then. She could practically feel the nervousness rolling of him. A little word of advice: Yokai Academy is a pretty scary place. The bus driver laughed as they entered the tunnel, and all they could see was darkness. The bus began to shake roughly, and Uhura was glad she put her seatbelt on, otherwise she was sure she would have fallen off. Suddenly the shaking stopped and they were once again able to see. "Here we are," the bus driver said as he took a drag from his cigarette and opened the bus door. Uhura saw that the boy stood up on shaky legs, no doubt a result from the ride. She watched as the boy took a step out of the bus before standing up. She grabbed both her bag and Omit's before noticing Naruto, who was still passed out. Debating on what to do, she shrugged before deciding to help her new acquaintance. "Oi, wake up, we're here," Uhura said as she shook his shoulder, trying to get him up. After a few moments he began to stir before tired blue eyes peered into her red ones. "What?" he asked groggily. "The bus ride is over, we're at Yokai Academy now," Uhura answered as she turned to leave the bus. Naruto nodded as he grabbed his own bag and followed her out the bus. Once they left, the bus driver turned to them and offered them a grin. "Well, now I hope you two enjoyed the ride," he said, but it was mostly aimed at Naruto, who glared at him. "Fuck you," was the blonde's simple statement, causing the man to laugh before driving off. Sighing, he turned around and saw that Uhura was waiting for him. Offering a small smile, he walked over to her and the two of them headed off in the direction of school. The two walked in silence as they had no idea what to say to the other. While Naruto had no problem with the silence, Uhura was wondering if she should try to start up a conversation. Sighing to herself, she chose to remain silent and couldn't help but compare herself to her sister. No doubt if Omid was here, she would have found a way to strike up some form of conversation. Eventually the time for them to split came. "I have to go find my sister," she said as they stopped walking. "Right, you twin, right? The one who rode her bike?" Naruto asked as he recalled their brief conversation on the bus. "Yes, I should go look for her before she gets herself into trouble," she stated. "Want any help?" Naruto asked, catching her off guard. Smiling a bit at the offer, she shook her head. "Thank you, but that's all right. I can handle it, besides I'm sure you have better things to do," Uhura stated. Naruto was about to deny her claim before his stomach growled, causing her to smirk as he lightly blushed. "Like eating, for example." "Right, I guess I could go for a bite," Naruto said, scratching the back of his head. Shrugging his shoulder, he offered her a smile. "Alright then, I guess I'll head off. If you need any help, just find me." "Alright, and again thank you for the offer," Uhura said. "Alright, hopefully I'll see you around campus. Who knows, we might even have some classes together," Naruto said as he turned around to search for the cafeteria. "Maybe," Uhura agreed as she turned around, quite pleased with herself. She was able to get along with someone outside her family, and she was able to rail in her pride. Yes, this was a good start for her first year of school. As he was walking, Naruto's lips twitched into a smirk. Silver hair, red eyes, and even though it was repressed I could still sense that impressive aura. Who would have thought that the first person I met here would be a vampire? Ura was able to find Omid after a few minutes of searching. After giving back her bag, the two of them headed for the office to pick up their schedule. As they walked, Omid happily told her about her new friend, a boy named Aono Sukune. Apparently she accidentally ran over the boy with her back. Ura sent her sister a look that practically screamed, "I told you so," but Omid ignored it as she continued her tale. Ura was shocked at what she heard. "You sucked his blood?" she asked with wide eyes, her usual calm, cool expression broken. "Why, yeah," Omid admitted as she looked away from her sister with blushing and embarrassment. "Baka," Ura chastised as she smacked the back of the pinkette's head. "Ow," Omid yelped as she clutched her head. "You should know better. What happened to self-control?" she scolded. "But I couldn't help it. His blood smelled so good." Omid tried to justify, but Ura just rolled her eyes. "Did you ask permission or did you just do it?" she asked, crossing her arms. Omid didn't answer, but the way she averted her eyes was all the answer she needed. "Again, what happened to self-control? What you did was very rude." But he didn't seem to mind. Omid tried. When Omid first told her about this Sukune, she was a bit wary. She was afraid that he would be like the other boys from their last school, boys who turned out to be jerks or perverts. From what she has heard, Sukune didn't seem like either, but she would keep an eye on him just in case. "I'll let it slide for now, but from now on you must try and control yourself," Ura said with a sigh. "Got it," Omid said with a smile before looking at her sister expectantly. Seeing this, Ura raised a brow. "What?" she asked, tilting her head a bit. "You've been here longer than I have. Have you made any friends?" she asked. Ura was about to say no when she paused and thought about it. She remembered her meeting with Naruto, and while they didn't have the same instant friend connection that Omid and Sukune seemed to have, there was something. "Not exactly," she answered carefully as she thought about it. "What do you mean?" Omid questioned with a frown. "I did meet someone on the bus and we got along fairly well. I wouldn't call us friends though, more like friendly acquaintances," Ura explained. "I see," Omid said as she thought about it before smiling. "Well, you said that you two got along, right? I'm sure you two will become friends once you get to know each other a little more." "I suppose so," Ura agreed thoughtfully. She found that she wouldn't mind having Naruto as a friend. He seemed nice enough, but she would have to get to know him better before she made any decisions. The two finally reached the office where they received their schedules. As they left the office, they frowned as they compared schedules. "We don't share any classes except for lunch period," Omid stated. "So it would seem," Ura agreed. "Well then, this is new." Oh yes, it was definitely new. The two of them always had the same classes since middle school. And even before that, they were homeschooled for a few years before they left for the human world. So to find out that they didn't have a single class together was a bit unnerving. "Maybe we should go back to the office and see if we can change it?" Ura suggested. Omid was silent as she thought about it before speaking. "I don't know, maybe this is for the best," she said, gaining the silver-haired girl's attention. "What do you mean?" Ura asked carefully. Was Omid trying to say that she didn't want to be with anymore? Was she going to lose her sister like she did her mother? As soon as she had that thought, she clenched her fists. "Stop it, do not think like that," she chastised herself as she listened to Omid's answer. "It's just that we've always been together. Maybe it's time to change," she suggested, causing Ura to stop walking and stare at her sister, who also stopped walking. "Are you saying, you don't want to be around me anymore?" she asked cautiously, causing Omid's eyes to widen at her implication. "No, that's not what I meant," she said before calming down. "It's just that maybe we've become a bit too dependent on each other." "Explain," Ura ordered, not fully getting what her sister said. "It's just that whenever I get into some kind of trouble, I always rely on you to get me out of it. While it's nice, I can't keep doing that forever. Eventually I'll have to learn how to take care of myself. Maybe this can give me that chance." Omid tried to explain, causing Ura to frown. "I'm sorry, I didn't know I was doing that." She apologized with a guilty expression. If what she said was true, then that meant she was stunting her sister's growth by not allowing her to gain real-life experience. "You have nothing to apologize for. I know you were just trying to protect me. Besides, it's also my fault too. If I didn't get into so much trouble, you wouldn't have to step in so many times to save me." Omid placated. She offered Ura a small smile and continued. Besides, this could be a good chance for you too. What do you mean? Ura asked, crossing her arms and raising a brow curiously. Well, now that you don't have to focus on protecting me so much, you can go out and do things that you want to do. You know, make your own friends in life. The younger twin explained, causing Ura to frown in thought. It was true, she realized. While she loved her sister and enjoyed spending time with her, her life pretty much revolved around Omid. She did not have a sister complex like Kokoa, but she would admit that she could be a bit overprotective when it came to Omid. Sighing, she pushed a strand of her silver hair before looking at Omid, who was watching her expectantly. I suppose I understand what you're saying, she said, feeling a little uncomfortable. Alright, we won't do anything about the schedule. However, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask me for help. Of course, and the same goes for you too, Omid said with a bright smile. Alright then, we better get going or we'll be late, Ura said as they began to walk towards their classes. Naruto was walking through the campus with a big smile. After that atrocious bus ride, he decided to get as much fresh air as possible. So he strolled through the school grounds to get familiar with the area, but alas, it was time for his first class. I wonder, will I have any classes with Ura? He asked himself as he walked towards his classroom. His thoughts began to drift towards her and he found himself smiling. He still couldn't believe that the first person he met was a vampire. One of his goals was to fight the legendary S-rank yokai that was known as the strongest race. He really hoped that she would be up for a spar someday. But as he thought about the chance of fighting her, he thought about what he knew of her. He was surprised when he started to talk to her. From what he's heard about vampires, he knew that they were considered the vainest of all yokai. Most vampires tend to look down on others, but Ura showed a bit of concern when she saw his condition on the bus. He tried to be polite and fight his sickness as he engaged in conversation, but he was surprised by her kindness when she told him he could rest if he wanted. He thought that a vampire would have thought of this as some form of insult. Looks like Mom and Dad were right. School will be pretty interesting, Naruto said to himself with a grin. He already met one S-rank monster, who knows what else he would see. Excuse me, he heard a feminine from behind ask. Turning around, he saw a girl his age with long pink hair and bright green eyes. Yes? Naruto asked, wondering what she wanted. Sorry, but I'm new here. I don't really know the school grounds yet and I kinda got lost. Do you think you could give me directions? She asked hopefully. Maybe, this is my first year though, so I might not be any help, Naruto said with a shrug, finding no reason why he shouldn't at least try and help her. Well, anything's better than just wandering around helplessly, the girl said as she handed him her schedule. I'm looking for Nekonome's class. Naruto took a quick glance at the paper and smiled. Well, you're in luck, I passed by her class earlier. Just go down that hall over there. When you reach the end, go right, it's the third room on the left side. Thank you so much. I have to hurry or else I'll be late, she said as she grabbed her schedule and ran towards the direction Naruto pointed at. Looking over her shoulder, she waved at him and smiled. Thanks again. No problem, Naruto said as he stuffed his hands in his pockets and headed for his homeroom. On his way, he couldn't help but shake of the feeling that the girl looked familiar. Ura was sitting in her seat, leaning her chin against the palm of her hand. If there was one word to describe how she felt right now, it would be bored. Well, that's not exactly true. Annoyed could be another word used to describe how she felt. The moment she entered the door, she already knew she would be getting many headaches this year. The boys made no attempt in hiding their perverse thoughts, and the girls were glaring at her jealously. So much for making friends. She could only hope that Omid was doing better than her. Hello students and welcome to Yokai Academy, someone suddenly said. She turned and saw that her teacher was now standing in front of the classroom. The teacher was a muscular, dark-skinned man with corn-rowed hair and black Japanese tattoos on both his arms. The kanji shown in the tattoo on his shoulder stands for death, and the arrow under it stands for person. He wore a headband with the kanji for whole, a black sleeveless shirt, tan cargo pants and black combat boots. My name is Barrett Sydney, but you can just call me Sid Sensei. As you know, Yokai Academy is a school where yokai learn to coexist with humans. Because of this, it is required for all students to stay in their human form, he explained, causing some of the students to nod, already knowing this, but Ura noticed a few students scowl at the idea of leaving with humans. Having spent a few years in the human world, Ura could say she didn't particularly care. While she didn't hate humans, she didn't have any love for them either. She was neutral for the most part. The only time she had any problems with humans were when they hurt Omid somehow. The door opened and a boy with spiky blonde hair entered. "Sorry I'm late. I had to give directions to someone, but because of that the bell rang before I got here." "It's alright. Since you were helping out a fellow student, I'll let it slide." That was the kind of man I was, Sid said before looking at a clipboard. "Let's see, the only one who was marked absent is Uzumaki Naruto." "I take it you're him?" "That's me." Naruto nodded. "Alright, like I said, I'll let it slide, but try and make it on time from now on." "Now take a seat," Sid said. Nodding, Naruto looked for an open seat. Once finding it, he started to make his way there. However, he paused when he saw Ura sitting by and offered her a smile and a nod, something that Ura returned. However, this little action did not go unnoticed, and it seemed to have angered the other students, more specifically the boys. Who does that bastard think he is? How dare he smile at Ura-sama like that? But wait, didn't you see her smiling back? How come he receives one of Ura-sama's smiles but we don't? That bastard better watch himself, or he may end up meeting an unfortunate accident. Naruto felt his eye twitch with every sentence that these fools were speaking. If they kept saying such nonsense, then he would lose control and go werewolf on all their asses. Ura saw Naruto's annoyance and smirked a bit. It was good to know that she was not the only one who was annoyed by these fools. Turning back towards Sid as he began to speak again, she smiled. She may not have been in the same class as Omid, but at least there was one familiar face. "Hey Ura," Naruto suddenly said as the two of them were walking down the hallway. "Yes, Naruto?" Ura asked, wondering what he wanted. "Does this happen often?" he asked, glancing around them. "Unfortunately." Ura sighed as she followed his gaze. "I see, it's seriously pissing me off." Naruto deadpanned with a twitching brow. "How do you think I feel? I've had to deal with this for years." Ura shot back, and although she seemed like the picture of calm, she was just as annoyed as Naruto. "Well then, I don't envy you, that's for sure," Naruto muttered. Just imagining what it would be like to have this kind of attention all the time was enough to make his jaw clench. Taking a deep breath and doing his best to ignore the herd of boys who were glaring and muttering curses and threats at him, he smiled at Ura. "On the bright side, it looks like you and I have some classes together. Yes, it's good to know that I have a friendly face amongst the crowd of perverted jerks." Ura agreed. "So what do you want to do?" Naruto asked curiously. Since it was only the first day, school ended rather quickly. Ura was quiet as she thought about it. On one hand, she could use this chance to get to know Naruto better, and if things continued this way she would be able to call him a friend. On the other hand, she was worried about Omid. While she agreed that the two of them should try and become more independent, she knew for a fact that she would have received the same attention from the male students as she did. "I think I should go find my sister," she said after some thought. "I have no doubt that she has been receiving the same attention as I have, and sometimes my sister can be too trusting and naive. That could be a problem." Naruto agreed. "So as much as I would like to stay and chat, I should probably get going," she said apologetically. And Naruto was once again taken off guard by her. She's really not your typical vampire, Naruto thought. Don't sweat it. I have a younger brother back home and I worry about him all the time. Go ahead and look for your sister. It's not like we won't be seeing each other, Naruto said with a smile. Alright, I guess I'll see you later, Ura said, waving at Naruto as she changed direction. Yeah, see ya around. Naruto waved back as he continued on trying to figure out what to do. As he was walking, he noticed a brown-haired boy walking by. He was staring at a piece of paper in his hand with a depressed look on his face. Shrugging his shoulders, he figured it was none of his business when he noticed someone marching right towards the boy, and he did not look happy if that scowl of his was anything to go by. Curiosity getting the best of him, he stayed by as the group headed for the brown-haired boy. The guy was a rather tall guy with brown hair and a lip piercing. Naruto couldn't help but compare this guy to a thug. Marching right towards the brown-haired boy, the thug grabbed him by his shirt and lifted him into the air, startling the boy. You, the thug growled as he glared at the boy trapped in his grip. It looks like you had a pretty fun time with Omid the other day. Saizo. The brown-haired boy stuttered before he was slammed into a nearby wall. So his name is Saizo, huh? Naruto thought to himself now that he had a name to place on the thug. What is your true form? Saizo demanded. Naruto watched as the brown-haired boy's eyes widened in panic. He seemed to be struggling with something before opening his mouth. Vampire. I'm a vampire, he blurted out, causing Naruto's and Saizo's eyes to widen. However, Naruto's eyes quickly narrowed as he began to think. There's no way he's a vampire. His yoki level is too low even if he was suppressing it. Not only that, he took a long time answering it, almost like he was trying to find a cover story or something. Now that I think about it, not only is his yoki level too low, it's practically non-existent. Naruto thought before his eyes widened. But the only way that's possible is if he was a human. Personally, Naruto had nothing against humans. The only time he had a problem with them was when they tried to bring harm to his family. If they left him alone, then he would leave them alone. His was broken out of his thoughts when he saw Saizo punch the wall right behind him. Stay away from Omid or else, Saizo threatened before stalking off. Sighing, Naruto walked over to the boy who was coughing on the ground before offering his hand. Need some help? He asked, gaining his attention. Oh, thank you, the boy said as he grabbed the offered hand. No problem, Naruto said before pulling the boy up. You alright there? Yeah, just a little shaken up, the boy said with a nervous chuckle. Naruto thought about what to say but decided to get right to the point. Listen, I don't know what a human is doing here, but this is a pretty dangerous place for you, Naruto said bluntly, causing the boy to freeze. What do you mean? Didn't you hear me? I'm a vampire, the boy protested, and Naruto fought the urge to roll his eyes. If that's your story, then whatever, I won't pry. I just wanted to give you a little word of advice, Naruto said as he stuffed his pockets and began to walk away. What is it? The boy asked carefully. Whatever reason you have for staying here, make sure it's worth it. And with that, Naruto went on his way. Oh, there he is, Omid said excitingly as she charged at the boy who Ura assumed was Sukune. Earlier the two of them met up and talked about how their respective days went. She learned that Omid had the same class as Sukune, and while she was still wary about the boy, she was glad to hear that Omid wasn't alone. However, thinking about Omid's friend made her think about her own possible friend. This was the second time she walked away from Naruto in order to look out for Omid. She really hoped she wasn't pushing him away. She really would have liked to spend some time with him, but when it came to her sister, she couldn't help it. It was practically instinct for her to look over Omid. But Naruto said he had his own sibling and understood what it was like. She hoped he was being sincere instead of just being polite. Why is making friends so hard? She asked herself. You hate humans, right? Well, I guess I better go because I'm a human, she heard Sukune shout. Turning towards them, she watched as Sukune ran away with a suitcase in hand while Omid stared in shock. Human? At a school for yokai? Ura thought in disbelief before focusing on Sukune. Her eyes widened when she couldn't sense an ounce of yoki from him. What was a human doing here? She looked at Omid, who now sported a look of depression. Crossing her arms with an uncomfortable look, asked, What are you going to do now? He's human, she muttered. That he is, Ura agreed with a nod. But if I remember correctly, he was also your friend. It looks like he is going to leave. Are you alright that his last memory of you is you saying you hate humans? He accepted me even though I'm a vampire, Omid muttered in thought. Looking up, Ura saw a determined look in his eyes. He was the first friend I ever made. I don't want to see him leave like this. Then you better go after him, Ura encouraged, causing her to nod. Omid quickly ran after the human, and Ura wondered what she should do now. She's going to go and try to reconcile with her friend. Surely she can't get into any more trouble, right? She asked herself. Know your place, Ura shouted as she delivered a devastating kick to Saizo's jaw, sending the orc flying through several trees. Sighing, she turned to Omid, who was sitting on the ground next to Sukune, who was on the ground clutching his injured shoulder. I leave you alone for 10 minutes and this happens, Ura said in exasperation. She decided to let Omid handle the Sukune situation on her own, but after a few minutes she felt a burst of yoki coming from the same direction. She had no idea how she knew, but she knew Omid was somehow involved. It must have been some kind of twin thing. The moment she arrived, she saw that some school thug named Saizo was trying to kill Sukune. What's worse was that she came just in time to hear that piece of scum say he would make Omid his woman. The nerve of that bastard. Ura wasted no time in finishing him off. So are the two of you friends again or what? Ura asked, getting right to the point. Getting over the shock of the silver-haired girl, the same on from the bus, he noticed. practically destroy Saizo, he turned towards a concerned Omid. I'm really sorry, Sukune. I know I reacted badly, but I was so shocked. I don't care if you are human, to me you are Sukune and you are my friend. Please don't leave, Omid pleaded. Sukune looked at her and the words from the blonde-haired boy came back to him. Whatever reason you have for staying here, make sure it's worth it. I think I have my reason for staying, he thought as he stared at Omid before smiling. And I have no doubt that she's worth it. You're my friend too, Omid-san. I think I would like to stay here with you, he admitted, causing Omid to beam at him before hugging him tightly. Ignoring the pain in his shoulder, he smiled and hugged her back. Seeing that her job was done, Ura silently left them alone, happy to see her sister was all right now. A human staying at Yokai Academy, huh? No doubt they will get into some trouble. But since he is Omid's friend, I guess I can give him a hand every now and then, Ura said to herself as she headed for her room. It had been a few days since the start of the school year, and while Naruto was hesitant about attending, he found himself enjoying his stay here. Next time he called his parents, he would have to thank them for practically forcing him to come here. But with the good comes the bad, and currently Naruto was facing one of the few things he hated about Yokai Academy. How dare you associate yourself with Ura-sama? A random male student shouted as he charged at Naruto. Piss off, Naruto shouted as he punched the guy with so much force that he ended up face first into a wall, stuck in there from the waist up. Come on guys, we can take him, another student shouted. That's right, we outnumber this bastard, another agreed. You think you can beat me because you outnumber me? Naruto asked as he cracked his knuckles, an ominous aura surrounding him, his dark smile causing a shiver to go down the spine of the 10 students that surrounded him. Oh, I am going to enjoy proving you weaklings wrong. While he enjoyed spending time with Ura, he could definitely do without her fan club, who saw him as a major threat in the battle of gaining their goddess affection. In a matter of seconds, Naruto blew the steam that was coming from his fist as he surveyed the damage. All the students who approached them were buried from the waist up in the ground, walls, trees and any other solid surface. Grinning in victory, Naruto walked away with his hands crossed behind his head. This was not the first time Ura's fan clubbed, and he had no doubt that this wouldn't be the last, but hopefully this would hold them back from attacking again anytime soon. While he normally loved fighting, these fanboys were all numbers and no strength, so he didn't get any real satisfaction when beating them. Hopefully I can have a real fight soon, he thought wistfully. So for the only people he met that could give him a challenge was Ura and his teacher Sid. He already knew Ura was a vampire, and while he had no idea what Sid was, his instincts were screaming that he was strong, and so far his instincts never failed him. His daydreams were interrupted though when he bumped into someone who was smaller than him. He looked down and saw he knocked down a girl with light ocean blue hair that was held by a purple headband. She had deep purple eyes and she wore the girl's uniform, but instead of a blazer she wore a yellow vest. However, her most noticeable features were her extremely large breast that bounced with every movement she made. Ow! The girl muttered as she clutched the back of her head, causing Naruto to snap to attention. Sorry about that, I should watch where I'm going, Naruto said as he offered her his, and which she took. After he helped her back on her feet, she offered him a smile, and for some reason Naruto felt his legs weaken. No problem, it was an accident. No harm done, see? She said as she did a little twirl. Unfortunately, this action made her skirt flare up, giving Naruto a peek at her sky blue panties, causing him to blush. He saw her giving him a knowing look and felt his cheeks burn in embarrassment. Coughing in his hand in an attempt to regain composure, Naruto offered her a smile. Name's Uzumaki Naruto, he said once again, offering her his hand. Hiya, my name is Kurono Kurumu. Nice to meet you, Uzumaki-kun, she said with a bright smile, and once again Naruto felt his legs weaken. What the hell is going on? He asked himself. Nothing like this has happened to him before. Hey Uzumaki-kun, since it's lunch period, do you want to the cafeteria with me to get a bit? Kurumu asked, getting into his personal space. Naruto grunted, surprised by her close proximity. Taking a step back, he scratched his head. Sorry, but I'm supposed to meet up with my friend Ura. Do you want to come with? Ura? As in Akashiya Ura? Kurumu asked with a frown. The very same, Naruto answered, confused by the sudden displeasure on her face. That sounds like fun, but I just remembered that I have to meet with Nekonomiya-sensei. I'll see you later, and with that she dashed away, leaving a confused Naruto. Well, that was weird. He muttered to himself before heading towards the cafeteria where Ura was supposed to be waiting for him. Akashiya Ura, Kurumu growled as she stomped through the hallway. When she saw Naruto, she found him to be a rather handsome man and thought he would make a great addition to her harem until she found her destined one. However, she was not expecting him to resist her charm. Sure, she saw that it did have an effect on her, but it was so small compared to the others, like that Sukune boy from earlier. She was used to having all the boys drooling over her, so to see someone resist her charm did not sit well with her. And she blamed Ura and Omid. Before those two came along, she was the star of all the male fantasies, but once they showed up she was pushed to the side and she did not like it one bit. Ura and Omid Akashiya, she muttered to herself, eyes narrowed and fist clenched. I won't let you two pests ruin my plans. Am I a bad friend? While waiting for Naruto, Ura was sitting at her table doing some homework so she wouldn't have to do it later on today. So she was rather surprised when Omid marched towards her and took the seat in front of her. Well, hello to you too, she said sarcastically as she worked on a math problem. I'm being serious, Ne-chan. Am I a bad friend? Omid repeated. Looking up from her work, Ura looked into her sister's eyes and saw that she was in fact serious, causing her to frown in confusion. She closed her notebook and gave Omid her full attention. Of course not. What on earth would make you think you are? She asked, perplexed. Omid was by far the kindest person she knew. In fact, she sometimes thought she was too kind. Well, something happened with Sukune, Omid admitted, causing Ura's eyes to narrow in suspicion. Did he do anything? She asked dangerously. If that idiot did something to hurt her sister, then so help her she would. No, it wasn't his fault, Omid corrected before lowering her gaze to her folded hands that rested on the table. If anything, it was my fault. I just don't know what I did. Why don't you explain to me what happened and I will try and help? Ura suggested. Well, it started like any other day. We met up and started to walk together. I was pretty hungry, so bit into his neck to suck some of his blood. But then he suddenly screamed and ran away. I kinda stood there in shock for a while, but once I came to my senses I went after him to see what was wrong. When I found him, he was talking to this other girl and they seemed to be getting along pretty well. She explained before she looked at her sister with sadness evident in her eyes. Do you think he's mad at me? Is he trying to replace me or something? Throughout her explanation, Ura was silent as she listened. Once she was done, she thought about the best way to answer her before speaking. No, I do not think he is replacing you. Really? Omid asked hopefully. No, I don't, but what I do think is that Sukune is conflicted. Ura answered, causing Omid to frown. What do you mean? She asked. Ura glanced around the room to make sure no one was eavesdropping. Lowering her voice so only Omid could hear, she began to explain her theory. You must remember that Sukune is a human. Other than those fictional stories about our kind, he has no real knowledge about the monster world. His only knowledge about vampires is what he learned from books and movies, and more often than not they depict us as monsters that only see humans as a blood source. Add that to the fact that every time you see Sukune you end up latched against his neck sucking blood, it would only increase his thoughts about you, seeing him more as a food source and less as a friend. Ura explained, causing Omid's eyes to widen in horror. Do you think he really thinks that? Omid asked quietly. I don't know him as well as you do, but from the few meetings that I have had with him I can tell he has low self-esteem. To him it would make more sense that a girl such as you hangs around him for his blood rather than friendship. Ura said, giving her opinion. She knew that her sister did not think like that, but like she said, this is what she thought Sukune felt. I guess that makes sense, Omid muttered. After a moment of silence she stood up. Thanks for the talk, Ne-chan. I'm going to go find Sukune and let him know that he's my friend and not a food source. Very well, I wish you luck. But a word of advice, lay off of the blood-sucking thing. It's only been a week since he learned of the monster world. He most likely still need time to adjust before having his vampire friend feeding off him. Ura said, causing Omid to blush. She really needed to learn how to control her urges. Okay, thanks again, she said before running off in hopes of finding her friend. Ura watched departure before shaking her head, but there was a small smile. Honestly, that girl can be such a handful sometimes, she said to herself, but she wouldn't change a thing about her. Just as she was about to open her notebook to continue her homework, someone new took Omid's place in the seat in front of her. Hey Ura, Naruto said, placing his tray of food on the table. Naruto. Ura greeted, sparing him a glance before returning towards her notebook. Already doing your homework? You must have too much free time or something. Naruto sighed before taking a bite out of his burger. Or perhaps I actually care about passing, unlike certain people. She countered. While she took her work seriously, Naruto didn't care about it at all. They sat in comfortable silence, but as Naruto was eating he remembered something from earlier. After swallowing his food he looked at the silver-haired vampire. "Hey Ura, do you know a student named Kurumu?" he asked curiously. Looking up from her work she raised a brow at him. "No, I can't say that I have," she answered, causing Naruto to frown. He remembered how tense Kurumu was when he mentioned Ura. Weird, he muttered to himself. At first he thought Ura pissed her off. Over the past week he noticed that Ura was a very prideful person, and while she was usually sensible she did have her moments of speaking before thinking. She also had no problem pointing out that vampires were superior to every other yokai race. "Why do you ask?" Ura asked curiously. "I bumped into her earlier. We talked a bit and she asked me if I wanted to have lunch with her." Naruto answered, causing Ura's eyes to narrow. For some strange reason she felt her stomach twitch at the idea of Naruto having lunch with someone other than her. She had grown to enjoy his company. True, they would bicker and annoy each other at times, but from what she understood that was normal between friends. "But I told her I had plans to have lunch with you already," he continued, and that strange feeling in her stomach disappeared. Was she hungry? "And how does this concern me?" she asked in a bored tone, causing Naruto to roll his eyes a bit. "Don't you dare roll your eyes at me, Uzumaki. Right, otherwise I will be forced to face the wrath of the all-powerful Ura-sama," Naruto said, waving a dismissive hand, ignoring her glare. "Anyway, when I mentioned you she seemed to have gotten mad. I figured you did something to piss her off." "What? Why would you assume that?" Ura asked, affronted. "When it comes to you, two things happen. Either the guys declare their love for you or the girls declared their hatred," Naruto explained with a shrug. "Shut up." Ura growled in annoyance, but she couldn't say anything about it since it was true. "Anyway, I do not know this Kurumu person. Perhaps she is just like the other female students and is jealous of me. I guess. I just thought I should bring it up," Naruto said as the bell rang. "Well, guess it's time for class." "Well, thanks for the heads up. I guess I'll keep my eyes open," Ura said with a shrug. While she appreciated the warning she wasn't too concerned. If this Kurumu decided to mess with her, then she would show her what would happen if someone was foolish enough to oppose a vampire. As the two left the cafeteria they failed to notice a blue-haired girl glaring at them. "So he is close to Ura. It must be because of her that he could resist my charm," she growled before stalking away. She needed to make some adjustments to her plans. With one final glance at the pair her lips twitched into a smirk as a thought hit her. "Yeah, that could work. Die punk. Go to hell, you no-good bastard. Twice in one day? You have got to be kidding me," Naruto growled as he dodged the pair of incoming fists. The difference thought was that the two punks who were attacking him deciding to transform into their true forms, which happened to have been trolls. "I'll give you one chance. Leave," Naruto growled, teeth resembling canines. "This is your own fault." A blue troll shouted, his voice much deeper now that the student was in his true form. "And how, pray tell, is this my fault?" Naruto said, losing himself. He could feel his werewolf blood telling him to silence these fools. To sink his claws into them and shut them up for good. "It's because you act all buddy-buddy with Ura-sama," the other troll shouted, this one green. "School is finished. All I want to do is go to my room and relax a bit, but you asses are making it really hard," Naruto said. The sound of bones cracking could be heard as they began to rearrange themselves for his true form, but they suddenly stopped. He took a calming breath and glared at the idiot before him. They were not worth fighting in his werewolf form. Dropping his back he stomped his foot on the ground 5 times before he vanished. "Oi, where'd he go?" the blue troll asked as he looked around the area. "I don't know," the green troll said. "Tesho, iron palm." He heard from above before he felt an incredible force slam into the top of his head, causing him to crash into the ground with enough power to knock him unconscious. "What the hell?" the blue troll shouted, seeing his friend down. "Don't worry, this will be over soon," Naruto said as he appeared inside the troll's guard before hitting him with 3 strong punches to the stomach, causing the troll to lurch forward. "Since it worked so well the first time, let's try it again." "Tesho." He hit the troll's chin with an open palm strike with enough force that his teeth shattered before he fell to the ground as a twitching mess. Finally, maybe now I can get some rest. Naruto sighed as he grabbed his bag. That was amazing, Uzumaki-kun. He heard a feminine voice shout followed by the sound of clapping. Damn it all to hell. Naruto thought as he cried anime tears. Why was the universe so against him leaving in peace? Careful to hide his annoyance, he turned and saw that it was Kurumu who was clapping. Oh hey Kurumu, he said as she walked towards him. What are you doing here? Oh, I was just walking by when I happened to have stumbled upon this little scene. To think you were stronger enough to take those two down with one hit. You didn't even have to transform. Kurumu exclaimed with a bright smile. It was nothing. Naruto said with a shrug. And he wasn't just being modest. Those two were pretty weak. Maybe, but still you were pretty strong. Kurumu said with a thoughtful look before smiling. Strong enough to help me with my problem, do you think you could? Help? With what? Naruto asked with a frown. Something was up with this girl. They just met a few hours ago and she's asking him for a favor? Plus, why the hell was she acting so familiar with him? You see, I need your help. She started stepping closer to him until her large breasts were pressed against him, causing him to blush. To take down Ura and Omid. Before he could comprehend her words, she grabbed his head and pulled him down for a kiss. Naruto's eyes widened in shock before his word went black. Once the last bell rang, Ura left her class and headed for her room. Planning on spending the rest of the day in quiet relaxation, she had to resist the urge to pull her hair once she ran into her sister, who had a look of utter heartbreak. Sighing, she accepted the fact that her day was not yet over and proceeded to help her sister. You know, last week when we found out we had different classes, I remember you saying this was a chance for us to become independent. By here I am finding myself constantly helping you. Ura said thoughtfully, causing Omid's shoulders to slump. I know, but I guess I was wrong. Sorry, she muttered, but Ura shook her head. No need to apologize, it's nice to know that you still need me. She answered, giving her a small smile. So what happened this time? Earlier today I went and searched for Sukune to apologize for the whole blood-sucking thing. But when I found him, we were interrupted by this girl named Kurumu. She explained, causing Ura's eyes to widen. Kurumu? Like the one Naruto warned me about? She thought to herself as Omid continued her story. She accused me of using Sukune for his blood, and when I tried to deny it, Sukune agreed with her. Omid said, a few tears in her eyes. After that I couldn't take it anymore and just left. Since then I've seen them passing by in the hallways. Sukune was following her like she was his entire world or something. I see. Naruto warned me about this Kurumu. Apparently she has some kind of grudge against me. Ura stated as she narrowed her eyes in thought. If the reason of her grudge is her jealousy, then it is possible for her to be jealous of Omid as well. Ura thought. What's her game? She said to herself, but Omid heard her. Well, she said she was a succubus who was trying to win the hearts of all the boys. Apparently we are getting in her way though. Omid explained, remembering her encounter with Kurumu. A succubus, you say? Ura asked, eyes slightly widened. Yes, Omid confirmed. That explains things. Ura stated, causing Omid to tilt her head. How does that explain things? She asked, earning a disbelieving look from her sister that was starting to make her uncomfortable. What, you honestly don't know? She asked, slapping her head with her hand when Omid shook her head. She is a succubus, as in a yokai that specializes in the seduction of men. They possess an ability, calm charm, which is a form of hypnosis that ensnares members of the opposite. Then that means Sukune could be brainwashed. Omid said in realization. Most likely, you better go find him. Once a man is kissed by a succubus, they will under her control for eternity. Ura warned, causing Omid's eyes to widen in panic. Oh no, Sukune, she shouted before turning around to find her. How you always end up in trouble, I'll never know. Ura muttered before running after her. Besides, this succubus was foolish enough to harm her sister. It was time for her to learn what happens when you threaten a vampire. Kurumu was sitting in the infirmary smirking in victory as a dejected Sukune was sitting down on a nearby chair. Yahoo, I did it. I made that stupid Omid cry. Kurumu cheered in her mind. Now all that's left is Ura. During Kurumu's internal monologue, Sukune was having his own thoughts. Why would I say such things to Omid-san? He thought dejectedly as he replayed the events of earlier. He felt his stomach twist as he recalled her pained expression. I have to go find her and apologize. Kurumu-chan, sorry, but I should get going. The human said, gaining her attention. Going? What do you mean? Kurumu asked in confusion. I said some pretty hurtful things to Omit-san. I should go look for her so I can apologize. Sukune said as he turned towards the door, thereby missing Kurumu's angry snarl. I practically throw myself at him and he still thinks about Omit, she thought angrily. I knew I should have kissed him already. What's so great about her? She whispered angrily, causing him to turn around. He took a step back when he saw that she was covered by a dark aura. Do you find me unattractive? What? No, you're a very beautiful girl. Sukune answered nervously. For some reason that seemed to have angered her further. Then what is it? Do you hate me or something? She asked in frustration as she glared at the human. What's wrong, Kurumu? Sukune asked, unable to stop the slight stutter. What's wrong? You have the nerve to ask me what's wrong? She fumed. After everything I did for you, you still chose her over me. I have never lost before, but those damned twins show up from nowhere and steal the spotlight. Well, I've had it, she thought as a pair of bat wings sprouted from her back. A devil-like tail appeared behind her and her nails grew until they resembled knives. I'll do whatever I can to see those two suffer. And I'll start by killing Omit's precious friend. She shouted as she charged. Oh God, I'm going to die. Sukune shouted in fear. He closed his eyes and waited for the inevitable. He expected to feel pain, but it never happened. Stay away from him, he heard a familiar voice shout, followed by the sound of something breaking. Opening his eyes, he saw Omit standing in front of him protectively. Scanning the room, he saw Kurumu was missing, but there was a huge hole where the wall was. Omit? Sukune cried in surprise. He heard a low whistle and turned to see Ura studying the hole with an appraising look. He didn't know Ura all that well, except that she was Omit's twin. He also knew that she was very overprotective. I understand that you are my sister's friend, but know this. If you harm her in any way, I will end your miserable excuse of a life. She threatened the day after the Saizo incident. Not bad, Omit. Ura praised. Omit was able to nail a pretty good hit on Kurumu that sent her through the wall. She may hate to fight, but that didn't mean she didn't know a thing or two about combat. You're going to pay for that, they heard Kurumu shout as she flew in the air, glaring at the group of three. I won't let you hurt Sukune. Omit shouted as she returned the glare, surprising Sukune, who had never seen the kind girl angry. She continued to glare at her for a while before turning towards Sukune. Sukune, you have to leave before she charms you again? Charm? Sukune repeated in confusion. It is an ability that lets you hypnotize the opposite. Ura explained as she kept an eye on Kurumu. From what she could sense, she knew she could defeat her with on kick, but based on the look in Omit's eyes, she would let her sister fight and only intervene if necessary. Wait, so you're telling me? Sukune started, eyes wide, that the only reason you said those hurtful things to Omit was because you were brainwashed? She said before sending a glare towards him. Consider yourself lucky, because if that was not the case, Yokai Academy would be missing its only human student. She hissed, causing him to shiver in fear. Why the hell are you talking so casually like that? Kurumu shouted. She didn't hear what Ura said, but she could tell that she didn't see him as a threat. Take this. Ura watched as the succubus charged towards them. Glancing at the room, she saw that it was too small for a fight, so she grabbed both Sukune and Omit before jumping out the hole before Kurumu could get them. I'd be careful if I were you, succubus. Ura warned, glaring at the blue-haired girl. If you keep this up, I might snap and tear off your wings. I'll admit I can sense that you're pretty strong. Not to mention I knew that if I attacked one of you, you would bring your sister as backup, so I brought someone to even the numbers. Kurumu said, snapping her fingers. A figure from the roof jumped down and executed a perfect landing, creating a dust cloud on impact. They saw a beau their age with spiky blonde hair and glazed blue eyes. He was wearing the same uniform, but the blazer and tie were missing and his sleeves were rolled up past his elbows. Omid and Sukune were surprised to see the same boy they had a brief interaction with on their first day. Ura, though, was the most shocked out of the group. Naruto? She asked, surprised. Naruto? As in your friend Naruto? Omid asked, having heard of him but never actually meeting him yet. Yes, she answered, still shocked at this development before narrowing her eyes. What the hell are you doing here? Isn't it obvious? I am here to assist Kurumu-sama. He answered smoothly. What? You're siding with her? Ura asked angrily. Of course, why wouldn't I side with her? Naruto calmly asked. Why would you do that? Earlier you warned me about her and you must know that she is after my sister and I thought we were actually friends but here you are siding with her. Ura said bitterly though gritted teeth. No hard feeling Ura, I'm just following orders. Naruto said but that did nothing to help Ura. Orders huh? So be it. Ura scoffed as she got into a fighting stance. Wait a minute, you said that Kurumu can charm people right? What if Naruto is charmed? I may have only met him once but this doesn't seem like his usual self. Sukune said remembering how Naruto knew he was human but didn't do anything about it. Ura blinked a bit before cursing herself. How on earth could she miss that? She just told the human that he was charmed yet the idea that Naruto was charmed never crossed her mind. It seemed like her anger hindered her thoughts. She had no idea why she was so angry but the idea of Naruto lying about being her friends and seeing him fight alongside that damned succubus felt like a bitter pill to swallow. Looks like I was found out. Kurumu said casually. During their talk she stopped flying and stood a few feet behind Naruto. While it was brief she could see the pain in Ura's eyes at the possible betrayal of her only friend here. And that was something that gave great satisfaction to the succubus. She knew she chose right when she picked Naruto to help out. Listen well you cretin, you had better release him or suffer the consequences. Ura ordered as she glared hatefully at her opponent. Now why on earth would I do that? Kurumu asked rolling her eyes. There's no way I would hand over my trump card. Then I guess we had to do this the hard way. Ura said she flared her yoki. Before they could blink Ura appeared behind Naruto and in front of a shocked Kurumu. I'm going to enjoy this. She cocked her fist back prepared to punch her lights out but before she could someone grabbed her outstretched hand. She looked over her shoulder and saw that it was Naruto. Sorry but I can't let you hurt her. He said as he shifted his body and threw her over her shoulder and away from Kurumu. Ura quickly spun in the air and landed on her feet skidding across the ground until she came to a stop. So I have to take her down and fight you too Naruto? So be it, she said as she flared her yoki once more. While she still had her Rosario on it was still an impressive amount. Works for me, I've been dying to fight you. Naruto shot back getting into his own stance. Fool, don't underestimate the power of a vampire. Ura countered with narrowed eyes. Naruto I want you to deal with Ura. I'll handle Omid and Sukune. Kurumu ordered. After Ura's little display she knew that the vampire was stronger than her. Hopefully Naruto could hold her back while she took care of the others. Omid may have been a vampire but she was the weaker of the sisters so she had the best chance against her. Like I would let you touch my sister. Ura said as she was about to charge but before she could Naruto was in front of her. Seeing that he caught her off guard with his sudden appearance Naruto acted. He delivered a strong punch to her stomach before spinning in a circle to send a heel kick. Regaining herself Ura aimed a kick at for his jaw but Naruto quickly stepped to the side to avoid it. Seeing his chance he grabbed her outstretched leg and began to spin around. Once he picked up enough momentum he threw her as far as he could and chased after her flying body. Now that he built some distance between them and Kurumu he could fight without risk of hurting her. Well looks like I was right about him being useful. Kurumu commented before turning towards the other two. So I guess that leaves us. Sukune stay behind me. Omid ordered as she grabbed the Rosario around her neck. Huh? Sukune asked before she pulled it off and yoki exploded around her. Like I said the first day. This Rosario acts as a limiter. To be honest I'm different than most vampires. I hate fighting or any other form of violence. I'm not as strong as Ura but if it means protecting my friends then I will fight. Omid declared as her pink hair gained a silver streak and her green eyes changed into a light shade of red while her pupils shifted into slits. Good to know because I am so going to enjoy this. Kurumu said as she spread her wings and flew to the air. Once high enough she performed a nosedive heading straight for the vampire. Omid-san get out of the way. Sukune shouted but he was ignored. Instead Omid shifted her legs and slightly turned her upper body. She may not like fighting but Ura made sure that she knew how to defend herself just in case. She recalled one of the first things Ura told her. Remember Omid, as vampires we are the strongest of all yokai. However, in battle strength does not mean everything. You must also consider technique, timing and precision. Omid kept a careful watch as Kurumu came closer by the second. What's the matter? Are you too scared to move? Kurumu taunted. Almost there. Omid thought as she ignored the insult in order to stay focused. What, you can't even talk? Kurumu continued. Almost there. Fine, stay quiet. It doesn't matter. Kurumu shouted in annoyance. Now, she thought as she quickly spun in a circle as she raised her leg. Before Kurumu could even blink, she felt something slam into the side of her head before crashing into the wall. Wow, Sukune uttered as he stared at the scene with his jaw on the ground. He knew she was a vampire, but he didn't expect this from the usually cheerful Omid. Take that. Omid cheered before she heard the sound of rubble moving. She turned to see Kurumu standing up on shaking legs, uniform ruined and a bruise forming on her cheek. I'm not done, she said, glaring at Omid. Naruto versus Ura. Is this all you got, Ura? I expected more from an elite vampire like you. Naruto taunted as he dodged kick after kick, which did nothing but infuriate the already angry vampire. The two were currently fighting in the middle of one of the outside eating areas. You want more? Then here you go, Ura said as she picked up her speed, catching Naruto off guard. Cursing a bit, he increased his speed to avoid her kicks, which were able to create gales for wind from the strength they possessed. They continued on with this dance before Ura smirked as she found an opening. Here's your elite vampire. Know your place, she shouted as she hit him with a strong roundhouse kick. Seeing that he was too close to dodge, Naruto acted fast. Tekkai, Iron Mass, he said as he felt his muscles tense. Ura expected to see him flying, but instead he was skidding across the ground after he was hit, making a trail of dust. She was rather surprised. While she was still wearing her limiter, she kicked him with enough force to send someone flying. That hurt. Naruto winced as he massaged his stomach a bit. Tekkai was a technique that hardens the user's muscles and increases their density in order to increase the user's defense. Alright, I guess it's my turn to go on the offensive, huh? Naruto said before he charged. Once he was close enough, he began to spin his body before slamming his elbow into her center. Senzen Tuchu, mountain-piercing elbow blow. Ura gritted her teeth as she felt the impact of the blow before she grabbed his arm to prevent herself from being pushed away. She quickly turned him around and hit his stomach with a knee strike, followed with a kick to the chin, causing his head to snap back. Now bad but not good enough, she said as she finished it with a spinning roundhouse kick, and this time he was sent sailing through the air until he landing on one of the tables. Looking around, he saw that he was unlucky enough to land on one of the dirty tables that still had food and other items before he blinked. He looked at one of the items near him and smirked. Perhaps it was good luck after all. What's wrong? Are you unable to get up? Ura taunted as she walked over towards them. Naruto quickly jumped on his feet and threw something at her. She looked at and saw that it was a water bottle. Vampires may be the strongest, but they still have weaknesses, Naruto said as he made a slashing motion with his hand, and the bottle was split in half with its contents spilling out. The next thing Ura knew was that she screamed in pain as the water splashed against her. Seeing this, Naruto charged forward and delivered a high-speed punch that sent her crashing to the ground. Damn it, Ura cursed. She was able to get a few good hits and had let her guard down. She looked up and saw Naruto walking towards her, another water bottle in hand. Why can't you break out of her charm? From what I can tell, you're definitely strong enough. I have no clue what you're talking about. Naruto shrugged before standing a few feet away from her. Why are you holding back? What are you talking about? Ura asked, trying to recover from the water. It wasn't much, but it didn't matter. Even a single drop was enough to harm to her. You're a vampire, right? Then fight like one, Naruto ordered. Excuse me? Ura asked in an offended tone. TCH. Vampire fight with overwhelming yoki that they turn into strength, and while your yoki is impressive, it is far from overwhelming, Naruto explained as he uncapped the bottle and poured some more water just to be safe. Ura grit her teeth as she tried to hold back a scream of pain. She still had her Rosario, so she was nowhere near fighting at full strength. She thought about taking it off earlier but went against it. And why? Her pride, of course. She saw that Naruto was able to keep up with her without having to shift into his true form. She let her pride get the best of her and refused to remove her limiter before she forced him to transform. And now she was barely able to move without feeling pain. As she was thinking, Naruto was doing his thinking as he threw the now empty bottle. Kurumu gave him orders saying he should finish her. Kurumu was the alpha and Ura was a threat to her. But Kurumu didn't possess an aura of an alpha. But if so, why was his mind saying she was one? Also, if Ura was an enemy, then why was there a voice in his head? Don't finish her. She is no threat. The voice would shout, which is why he resorted to using the water. Even though he was told to finish her, he did not want to follow those orders. Why can't I follow those orders? Despite her threatening my alpha, I do not see her as an enemy. He thought to himself. Fight her, yes, he knew he wanted to fight her, but that was it. He didn't want to harm her permanently. She is no enemy. But she threatened my alpha. You have no alpha. You are alpha. Then why do I think she is? Ura watched as Naruto seemed to be thinking. Whatever it was, she could tell he was starting to get frustrated. Why have you not obeyed your master's orders yet? Ura asked, spitting out the word master. If she could stall him, she might be able to move enough to remove her Rosario. While the water still hurt, she should be able to recover enough to take him down. No more underestimating him. I am confused, he admitted. About what? Ura asked, hoping to keep him busy. You're supposed to be my enemy, but for some reason I can't see you as one. He sighed as he sat down in front of her and clutched his head. Really? Ura asked, surprised. Was he breaking from Kurumu's control? Why is that? Anyone who threatens Alpha is an enemy of the pack. Naruto muttered, but Ura still heard him. Alpha? Pack? She repeated, but before she could give it some thought they were interrupted. Ura-chan. Turning, she saw Omid running towards her, dragging a reluctant Kurumu by the tail with Sukune following. Are you alright? I've been better, Ura answered before she heard a growl. Turning, she saw Naruto glaring at them. You hurt her, he growled out as he stood up and charged. Naruto, stop, Kurumu ordered, causing the blonde to freeze. But, he was confused. They hurt her, so they were the enemy, right? Enough, this fight is over, Kurumu said as she raised her tail, the tip touching his head. Release. Naruto's eyes glowed white before they slumped back and he fell to the ground unconscious. What did you do? Ura asked, looking at the blonde before shifting her gaze to the succubus. I released him from my charm, she answered, but I thought he was already released. It looked like he broke free before you got here, Ura said in confusion. From what she could tell, Naruto was breaking free, but when he saw Kurumu he lost control and the charm took over again. Impossible. No one can break free from the charm of a succubus kiss. Kurumu countered. I see, Ura said as she tried to figure out what happened then. However, she blinked when she registered Kurumu's words. You kissed him? Maybe? Kurumu said as she took a step back from the angry vampire. Ura had no idea where the sudden anger came from. Why was she so angry that she kissed Naruto? It was most likely because she got so used to his company that the idea of him leaving to become this girl's eternal slave upset her. Yes, that was it. You're lucky I can't move right now, she said through gritted teeth. The succubus would be spared for now, but when the effects of the water wore off she would get her revenge. What do you mean you can't move? He beat you? Omid asked in disbelief. Absolutely not, Ura shot back. He did not beat me. He tricked me and used my weakness against me. Well, technically it wasn't so much as he tricked her, more as she was overconfident and paid the price, but they didn't need to know that. Besides, I was not fighting at full strength, she said, pointing towards her Rosario. Anyway, what's with her? I thought she was the enemy, she asked, motioning towards Kurumu. Oh, we were able to work things out, Sukune explained with a smile. Ura raised a brow when she noticed Kurumu blush. So we came back here to help out, but it looks like you didn't need it. You mean to tell me that after all we've been through with her you were able to work things out, just like that? Ura asked in disbelief. Sure, Kurumu looked like she's seen better days, but she had no broken bones. She was still able to stand on her 2 feet. What, so they settled their difference with words? Seeing them nod, Ura sighed and closed her eyes. She really wished that the day would just end. I can't believe I was brainwashed, Naruto muttered bitterly. He was walking with Ura through the hallway as she explained to him what happened. Unfortunately, all he remembered was Kurumu kissing him, and then after that nothing. True, although I am surprised. A succubus kiss is supposed to be the ultimate charm, and yet it looked like you were resisting it near the end, Ura said, causing Naruto to shrug. Since he had no memory of his brainwashed state, he had no idea what to say about it. Sorry about the whole water thing, he apologized with a wince. You were under someone else's control, so I will let it slide this time, she said before glaring at him. Do not let it happen again. Trust me when I say I will do whatever it takes to not get brainwashed again. Naruto sighed. Another moment of silence. You were pretty strong, she admitted, causing Naruto to smile. Thanks. You also said you were dying to fight me. Was that true, or was that the charm speaking? She asked curiously. That was true. I've always wanted to test myself against vampire, and once I found out that you were one, the idea of sparring you has constantly been on my mind. Naruto explained. I see, well, you did pretty good, but I was not fighting at full strength, Ura said, causing Naruto to nod. True, but from what you said, neither was I. Naruto countered, causing the girl to hum in agreement. Perhaps we will have a rematch sometime, Ura suggested, causing Naruto to grin in anticipation. Get out of the way. What? Naruto blinked as he and Ura turned towards the direction of the shout. They watched as Sukune ran right past them, shortly followed by Omid and Kurumu. Wait for me, Sukune. Kurumu. Leave him alone. What the hell? Naruto asked as he watched them leave. He narrowed his eyes a bit when he saw Kurumu and had half a mind to chase after her to get some payback from the other day. I don't want to know. Ura sighed as she walked away and headed towards class. Naruto looked at her, then at the retreating group, before shrugging and followed Ura to class. Just another normal day at Yokai Academy. Uzumaki Naruto stalked through the night with a purpose. He gave it some real thought and decided on how he would get back at Kurumu for her little brainwashing kiss. At first he thought he would get back at her by kicking her ass. Sure, he was respectful to women, but he was not the kind of person who would hold back the punches on someone based on gender. Things like gender and age meant nothing on the battlefield. If a female decided to attack him, then he would fight back with everything he had. And as far as he was concerned, Kurumu was the one who attacked first, and it was time for his counter-strike. The only thing left was to think up how he would get revenge. Now that the fight was officially over, he couldn't do anything that could physically harm her. From what he understood, the succubus was now friends with the pink-haired vampire and human that she tried to attack. He had no idea how they became friends, but the only thing that mattered was that they were friends. Because of this, doing anything that harmed her would probably upset Omid, and anything that would upset Omid would anger Ura, and an angry Ura was something he tried to avoid at all costs. So he would have to get his revenge the old-fashioned way. Pranks. Lots and lots of pranks. And he already knew what he would do for his first strike. Finally reaching his destination, he looked at the girls' dormitory. He took a few sniffs and found Kurumu's scent. Bending his legs, he jumped into the air and landed on the windowsill of the room her scent was coming from. He reached to lift the window and smirked when he found it was unlocked. Perfect, he thought as he silently crept into the room. He scanned it to see a typical girl's room and saw Kurumu was sleeping away on her bed, buried beneath her blanket. Showtime, he whispered to himself as he reached for the back that was slung over his shoulder. For the next few minutes, Naruto silently went to work. Once he was finished, she crept towards the window, and just as he was about to jump out, he looked over his shoulder and smirked at the sleeping Kurumu. This is only the beginning, he quietly said before jumping out. Naruto was casually leaning against the school wall. His eyes were closed and his hands were stuffed in his pockets, making him look like the picture of relaxation. Every now and then his nose would twitch as he took in the different scents around him, but he did not find the one he was looking for. Sighing, he opened his eyes and gazed at the sky and thought. Only 2 more days until the full moon shows up. He thought to himself, I'll have to find a way to burn out my excess energy. Ura's fan club always finds a way to piss me off. Maybe this time I'll antagonize them first. He thought to himself. More often than not, those guys were a bunch of weaklings, but maybe fighting all her fans at once would be a challenge. As he was thinking, a familiar scent reached his nose and he couldn't help but smile. Standing up from the wall, he turned around and waved at Ura as she approached him. Yo, he greeted with a lazy wave. Naruto. She responded with a nod as she continued to walk. Naruto walked by her side as they headed for homeroom. Is something happening today? Naruto asked curiously. Not that I am aware of. Why? Ura asked, glancing at him curiously. Shrugging his shoulders, Naruto clasped his hands behind his head and answered. Earlier today I saw a couple of students carrying a bunch of stuff. There were posters, props, hell, I even saw some students wearing some kind of costume. Perhaps something is happening today, but I do now know what. Ura said. The two walked in comfortable silence when suddenly. What was that? Ura asked, looking for the source of the feminine scream. She looked at Naruto and saw that he was now sporting a devilish grin. What did you do? What makes you think I did anything? Naruto asked, wiping the grin off as he wore a mask of innocence. A mask that did not fool Ura in the slightest. I will not even dignify that question with an answer. Instead I will ask once more, what did you do? She asked, turning to look at him fully as she crossed her arms. Okay, I may or may not have gotten a bit of payback against Kurumu. Naruto said, his innocent mask replaced with a mischievous smile. Oh really? Ura asked with a raised brow. She was about to ask more, but Naruto just shook his head and motioned for her to wait. Remembering the irritation she felt towards the succubus the other day, she decided to wait and see what Naruto had done to her. She didn't have to wait long before she saw Kurumu, and when she did, her eyes widened. First off all, she had to do a double take to make sure it was really her. Instead of her usual blue hair, Kurumu now had bright pink hair, and without it being tied up it fell to her shoulders. Also written across her chest in bold writing was, Omet's bitch. Naruto and Ura watched silently as an angry Kurumu walked past them. That's not all, Naruto whispered before taking in a deep breath. Ura watched curiously as he released the breath with enough force to create a whirlwind that blew Kurumu's skirt up. The now pink-haired succubus shrieked in embarrassment as everyone was able to get a view of her panties and, more importantly, the words, property of Omet, that were printed on the back. Out of all the possible forms of revenge, why did you choose this? Ura asked, unable to hide the surprise she felt when she saw Kurumu. Well, somehow she was able to become friends with your sister and that human guy, right? Naruto asked, making sure no one heard him. Ura raised an eyebrow. She did not know how he knew Sukune was human, but he didn't seem to care, so she let it go. Yes, what does that have to do with anything? Well, since she was friends with them, I figured that if I hurt her then that would upset them, and if I upset your sister then I would have to face your wrath. Naruto explained. So I decided that embarrassing her for a while would work just fine. I see, well that was a very interesting prank. Ura said, casting a glance at Kurumu, who tried to ignore all the looks she was receiving. This was probably the first time in her life that she didn't want to be the center of attention. Well, I remember the whole thing started because she was jealous of you and Omet, so I thought this would be fitting. Naruto elaborated, causing Ura to nod. It did make sense. I must say that this is an interesting way to get revenge. Ura commented, lips twitching in amusement. Thanks, Naruto said with a grin, feeling very pleased with himself. Maybe next time she'll think twice before trying to brainwash me again. Alright class, today we will be doing something different. Sid addressed his class once the bell rang. As you know, the purpose of Yokai Academy is for yokai to learn how to coexist with humans. To help with this, there are various club activities that help students learn more about different human cultures. The clubs have set up different stands for you to look at. All students are required to join a club, so you will spend the day looking for a club that interests you. After saying his piece, Sid sat down at his desk and pulled out a newspaper to read. Students rose from their seats and shuffled on out. Naruto lazily stood up and glanced at Ura. So I guess all those people I saw earlier were setting up for this club thing. He commented as he headed for the door. So it seems, Ura said, walking by him. They turned a corner and paused in their steps as they studied their surroundings. In front of them was a sea of yokai. Every nook and cranny was filled with students trying to recruit new members. How on earth did I not notice this? Naruto muttered to himself, staring at all the colorful decorations and club stands. I have no clue, Ura said, wondering the same thing. So, what kind of club do you want to look at? Naruto asked curiously. Ura was silent as she thought about it before shrugging. I do not know, honestly I think this is a waste of time. She answered. She saw no point in wasting her time with these frivolous club activities. Maybe, but it doesn't change the fact that we have to find a club to join. Naruto pointed out as he looked around. Maybe there was some kind of ultimate fighting club where the strongest students are pitted against each other. Hearing this caused the vampire to huff in annoyance. I suppose, very well. I guess we should just look around. Maybe we can find something interesting. Quote, that's the spirit, Naruto said with a grin. And thus the search for a club began. Photography club. Ura-sama, someone of your beauty would make for a fantastic model. A student holding a camera said. Ura just stared at the boy with a raised brow before scoffing. Your attempts at flattery are quite pathetic. I already know I am beautiful. Such a humble personality. Naruto's sweat dropped. Forgive me for stating the obvious. Please think about joining our club. The student pleaded. We can take a lot of fantastic pictures. Would you be opposed to some nude shots? Damn right I would. Ura shouted with a tick mark as she kicked the student with enough force to send him crashing into the photography stand. Next club, Naruto said as ushered an irate Ura away. Archery club. Damn you Uzumaki, the archery captain shouted as he aimed his bow and arrow at Naruto. Oi, what the hell? The blonde shouted as he dodged an incoming arrow. I seriously doubt shooting me is good advertisement. You have some nerve. Another member shouted as he prepared his arrow. What the hell did I do this time? Naruto asked as he ducked down in order to dodge another arrow. Being all friendly with Ura-san and then coming here. How dare you mock us? Members, prepare your bows. The captain shouted as all the members lined up and prepared their shot. Naruto gulped audibly as the arrows were shot into the air before they began to descend up him. He glanced at Ura, who was sitting in the side with a mocking grin. It was obvious that she was enjoying this little show. Sometimes I wonder why I hang out with you. Naruto deadpanned before he began to twist and weave his body in an attempt to avoid being turned into a pin cushion. Cooking club. Boom. And stay out. A student wearing a chef's hat and apron shouted as he kicked Ura and Naruto out of the kitchen. Who does that cretin think he is treating me in such a manner? Ura hissed as she dusted herself. She turned to meet the incredulous gaze of Naruto. What? How on earth did you cause an explosion? You were just boiling water. Naruto shouted in disbelief, causing her to blush lightly in embarrassment. So cooking is not my strongest suit. Big deal, she said as she walked away. The I Love Akashiya Ura Club. What the hell am I looking at? Ura asked, brow twitching dangerously. Well, this is interesting, Naruto commented with an amused grin as he stared at the club dedicated to his silver-haired friend. Maybe I should join. Take another step closer and I will end you. Ura said seriously. Not even a little peek? Naruto tried. Fine, you can be such a buzzkill. Naruto pouted as the two continued on their way. So, now what? Naruto asked, scratching the back of his head. So far they had no luck whatsoever with these clubs. I don't know. Ura sighed as she massaged her temple. Every club they visited did nothing but piss her off. Now that I think about it, are you going to join the same club as your sister? Naruto asked out of the blue. I hadn't thought about that. Ura admitted with a thoughtful expression. Since she didn't have any classes with Omid, then joining the same club would be the best chance to be with her. If you want, we can go look for her so you can talk about it. Maybe she already found a club she's interested in. He suggested. I would like that, thank you. She said after a moment of thought. Right, so we better start looking. He said. Where should we start? Ura was about to speak, but before she could even open her mouth, large commotion drowned her out as a herd of boys ran past them. Quick, let's go to the swimming club, a boy shouted. Hot girls wearing swimsuits? I'm in, another shouted. I can't wait to go swimming with beautiful girls. Eventually the boys were gone and Ura rolled her eyes in annoyance. Honestly, what was it with all the boys at this school? She turned to Naruto but blinked when she saw he was nowhere to be found. What the, where did he go? Ura asked, tilting her head slightly. Assholes. Now I lost Ura. Naruto complained as he walked around keeping an eye open for his friend. He somehow got caught in the stampede of hormonal students and got separated from the vampire. He had no desire to join the swimming club, so once he was able to escape from his kidnappers, he went out to search for Ura. Well, hello there, handsome. He heard someone from behind say. Turning around, he was greeted by the sight of a girl with forest green eyes and red hair. And like many other girls in this school, she had a killer figure. You look a little lost. I guess you could say that. My friend and I were looking for a club, but we got separated. He explained, causing her to nod in understanding. So you haven't found a club yet? She asked, causing Naruto to shake his head. Tell me, how do you feel about nature? Naruto was silent as he thought about it. In a word, nature to him was awesome. He loved running through forests in his true form, and the smell of nature was simply amazing to him. I love it. That seemed to have been the correct answer because she gave him a beaming smile that made him blush a little. Then you might be interested in the Nature Appreciation Club. Nature Appreciation Club? Naruto repeated, somewhat interested. That's right. All over the world humans are destroying nature. What we do is find different ways to help preserve the wildlife. She explained, causing Naruto to nod. He had seen many forests getting cut down in order to create new cities to accommodate with the ever-growing human population. It may seem pointless, but if there's even the slightest chance of making a difference, then we will take it. Well, that's a pretty commendable goal, miss. Naruto said with a smile. Why, thank you. By the way, my name is Kairio Kaori, first-year student. She introduced herself. Well, it's nice to meet you, Kaori-san. My name's Uzumaki Naruto, also a first year. He introduced back. You mind if I take a quick look at your club? Are you kidding? I'd be delighted if you looked. Follow me and I'll show you the ropes. Kaori said with a smile as she led Naruto away. Where's that idiot? Ura said to herself as she looked for the blonde. Shortly after their separation, she made her way to the swimming club. Now as a vampire, she would usually steer clear of that club, but she was only looking for her friend, so as long as she stayed away from the pool she would be alright. As she made her way, she was bombarded with countless requests to join several clubs, but she ignored them all. She had no intention of joining a club that was filled with nothing but perverted fools who made no effort to hide their disgusting thoughts. As she looked, she saw a pink blur heading towards her and blinked. When it came to the color pink, only one thought came to mind. Omid, she called out, gaining the blur's attention as it came to a stop. Ura? A distraught Omid asked as her eyes landed on her sister. What's wrong? Ura asked, knowing something was wrong. She took a quick glance around and noticed the absence of a certain human. Gritting her teeth a little, she looked back at her sister, knowing this involved Sukune somehow. It's nothing, the pink-headed muttered, hoping to avoid the topic. Omid, Ura warned. So did you find a club yet? Omid asked, trying to move in. Ura stared at her for a good minute before sighing. Not yet, she answered. She would drop the subject for now. Naruto and I have been searching, but so far we have had no luck. Where is Naruto? Omid asked, looking for him. She did not know him that well, and the only real interactions she had with him was when he gave her directions on the first day and when he was brainwashed by Kurumu. But she wanted to know the real him. He was able to do something most would think was impossible. He befriended her sister. Whenever Ura spoke of him, she may have sounded like she was annoyed with him or something, but there was also this fond look in her eyes that she had rarely seen from her. He got dragged away by a bunch of pests to the swimming club. Ura answered, noting how Omid winced at the mention of the club. I see. Omid trailed off. She had just come back from the swimming club and had no real desire to go back. How about we go look at some of the club stands and you can tell me what's bothering you? Ura suggested. Omid looked at her before offering a small smile. Alright, it's been a while since you and I spent some time together anyway. Omid added. That's right, let's go. Ura agreed. Nothing like the feeling of fresh grass between the toes. Naruto said as he wiggled his bare feet against the grass as freshly planted grass. One thing about Naruto was that he hated wearing shoes. They felt constricting against his feet, but in order to fit in with the humans he learned to deal with it. I know what you mean. Kaori agreed as she discarded her shoes along with him. Although I thought I was the only one who felt like that. I've been to many cities before, but in my mind nothing beats the fresh smell of nature. The feeling of the great outdoors always gets my blood pumping, Naruto said, taking in a deep breath before releasing it with a smile. I'm glad you feel that way. It's always nice to meet another person who appreciates nature. Kaori said. Come on, I'll take you to the club captain. He'll tell you more about the club. Alright, he said as he led to a rather bulky-looking student. He was taller than Naruto and looked like he belonged in some kind of bodybuilder club instead of the nature appreciation club. He had green eyes and brown cropped hair. Instead of the uniform, he wore a short-sleeved white shirt and dark brown pants. Over his shirt he had a dark green gardening apron. Oni-sama, I brought someone who might be interested in joining, Kaori said once they reached him. The older boy's face broke into a small smile as he greeted her. I see, good job Imouto-chan, he said before turning towards Naruto. Hello there, my name is Kairio Mashu, the club captain and third-year student. Nice to meet you, Mashu-senpai, I'm Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto greeted with a bow. Excuse me for sounding skeptical, but I find it hard to believe that you are interested in joining, Mashu said as he knelt on the ground and began to plant some seeds. What do you mean? Naruto asked with a frown. What I mean is that most boys tend to join this club in hopes of getting closer to the female members. Mashu explained as he pointed towards a few male students who didn't bother to hide their open leering of the female student body. I can assure you that I have always loved nature, Naruto said. Before he was adopted by the Huang family, some of his happiest memories were of him running through different forests exploring new lands. Mashu appeared to be studying him for a while before nodding. I see, in that case I'll give you a rundown. We do exactly what our club name entails. We appreciate nature. Now there are many different ways to do this, from gardening, pruning, picking up litter, or spreading awareness. So if you're looking for something with a little more action, then this is not the club for you. He deadpanned. I see, Naruto said with a sweat drop. Baka ni sama. Try and sound more enthusiastic. Kaori chastised as she slapped the back of her brother's head, though she had to jump in the air to reach. Mashu was a head taller than Naruto and Kaori only reached his shoulders. What are you talking about? I was being enthusiastic, Mashu said with a confused look. Kaori just stared at him blankly before sighing. Sorry about that, Naruto-san. Oni-sama isn't the most expressive guy out there. Now that's just rude, Kaori-chan. I can be very expressive. Mushu protested, but his facial expression did not change. Of course, Oni-sama, she said dismissively. Come along, Naruto-san, I'll show you around. All right, Naruto said as he followed the redhead. So Omid, are you going to tell me what made you so upset earlier? Ura asked as she took a sip of her tomato juice, taking a break from their club search. If things kept going the way they were, they would never find a club. I already told you, Nei-chan, I wasn't upset. Omid insisted, only to yelp in pain as Ura flicked her forehead. Do not lie to me, Omid. You were never any good at it. Ura chided, causing Omid to pout. It's just, something happened with Sukune. She finally admitted, causing Ura's eyes to narrow a bit. I knew it, she thought in annoyance. What happened? We were looking for a club and we somehow got dragged into the swimming club. She started and winced a bit when she saw Ura's disapproving stare. Omid, you know how dangerous it is for us to be near water. Ura stated, causing the pinkhead to nod. I know, it's just, Sukune looked like he was having a lot of fun swimming. Sometimes I wish I wasn't a vampire, she said in a remorseful tone. Ura frowned at this, silently promising to unleash a world of pain on Sukune. Don't say something like that, Omid. You should be proud of what we are. I know, but still, I can't help but wish that I could be normal like him, she said as memories of her time in the human world filled her mind. She remembered how isolated she felt around them. And now, because of her weakness to water, she was isolated from her first real friend. Ura sighed as she could practically see her sister's dark thoughts. She racked her brain trying to find a way to cheer her up. She idly wondered what Naruto was up to right now. As you can see, the land around here could use a little more green, Kaori said as she pointed towards their surroundings. Yokai Academy truly lived up to the stereotypical haunted house image, including dead trees and grass. Other than this small garden, the place looked like a wasteland. So it is our duty to help regrow and take care of this land. Not the most action-packed club, but it could be relaxing, Naruto muttered to himself. He never tried gardening before, but who knows? Maybe he had a green thumb waiting to be unleashed. With nothing better to do, he grabbed a small gardening shovel and a potted plant. Stabbing the shovel into the ground, he dug a small hole before transferring the plant into the hole and filled it up. He took a moment to observe his work before shrugging as he repeated the process with a few more potted plants. You should be gentler with that shovel. You might damage the plants by accident, Kaori pointed out. Oops, he muttered. Sorry, never done this before. It's alright, at least you're trying, which is more than I can say about the other boys, she said as she pointed towards a group of boys who were trying to flirt with the female members. So Kaori-san, how did you get interested in this club? Naruto asked, trying to make conversation. Well, for one, my brother is the club captain, so I thought that would be obvious, she pointed out with an amused smile as Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly. But mostly because I grew up around nature. I grew up in one of those villages that weren't touched by modern-day technology, ya know? So while most city kids would watch TV or play video games, I would go out and run in flower patches or see how high I could climb up trees. Really? Wow. Naruto whistled. I know. Because of that, I grew up to really appreciate Mother Nature's gifts, she said, causing Naruto to nod in understanding. I know what you mean. I used to travel a lot and got the chance to run through a bunch of different forests, Naruto said with a grin, recalling his old adventures. Really? Interesting. You sound like quite the adventurous person, Naruto-san, she commented. I've had my fair share, Naruto said. Being adopted by a Chinese mob family pretty much guaranteed a life of adventures. Perhaps you can tell me about them sometime. Kaori suggested with an interested look. Maybe. Naruto agreed. Great, so have you been enjoying your time at Yokai Academy? It's alright, but sometimes it can get really annoying. Naruto gave his answer. Really? Like what? Kaori asked curiously. Naruto opened his mouth to speak but was interrupted. Isn't that bastard Uzumaki? TCH. What the hell is he doing here? Oi, look at that. He's hanging around a super cute girl. What? First Ura-san and now her? Who does that piece of shit think he is hogging all the hot girls to himself? I say we teach him a lesson. Kaori watched as Naruto's eye twitched furiously with each sentence as the group of 10 boys stalked towards them. Excuse me for a moment, Naruto said with a pleasant smile as he stood up. He turned towards the group and the smile was replaced with a snarl. What the hell do you dipshits want? For you to die, they shouted as they leapt into the air and charge. Funny, I was thinking the same about you. Burying punch, the blonde shouted as he cocked his fist back. Kaori watched with wide eyes. One moment she saw a bunch of boys charging at Naruto and then she blinked. Once her eyes opened she saw said boys buried head first into the ground as Naruto stood in the same spot with his arms crossed. Huh, take that you bunch of pansies, he taunted before turning back towards her. So yeah, that's pretty much the thing that annoys me most about school. You mean this is a regular occurrence? Kaori asked as she surveyed the damage. Other than the occasional twitch, those guys looked like they wouldn't be getting up anytime soon. Yeah, ever since the male population of school found out that I'm friends with Ura, they've tried to jump me. Naruto snorted. Ura? As in Akashiya Ura? She asked curiously. The very one. Why? Do you know her? He asked, tilting his head a bit. Not personally, but I've heard of her. According to the rumors, she's really beautiful, but she's also very cold. She explained. I wouldn't call her cold. Naruto mused as he felt the need to defend his friend. I mean, sure, she can have quite the temper, but she's pretty level-headed most of the time. Really? Huh, I've seen her passing by and she seems pretty antisocial. Kaori commented, causing Naruto to think. That wasn't far from the truth. I don't think that's the right word, I'd say she's more reserved around others. He clarified. Kaori seemed to be thinking about it before shrugging. Everyone's different, I guess, she said before pouting playfully. But everyone talks about how beautiful she is. Makes me feel a little jealous sometimes. Really? Ura always complains about the attention. She says that she never has a moment of peace. He said, causing her to hum in thought before nodding. I can see how that can get pretty annoying. But what about you? She asked, leaning towards him a bit. What about me? He asked, confused. Do you think I'm pretty enough to have my own fan club? She asked playfully before leaning towards his ear, whispering. Well, do you, Naruto-kun? Naruto shivered a bit at the feeling of her breath caressing his ear, not to mention the way she said his name. He felt his cheeks heat up when he noticed how close she was to him. Why didn't she have a fan club again? He shook his head and was about to speak when something hit his nostrils. He took a few sniffs in the air and gulped. Grinning in satisfaction, Kaori leaned back, pleased with herself as she stared at his flustered appearance. However, she blinked when she saw him take a few sniffs with a strange look in his eyes. Hey Kaori, are you wearing some kind of perfume? He asked out of the blue. No, she answered in confusion. However, it was her turn to blush when Naruto invaded her personal space and seemed to be sniffing her. Really? Because you smell amazing, he said in his typical blunt fashion. Huh? Kaori mumbled, blushing harder, not sure what to say. I mean, damn, I'm starting to feel intoxicated. He continued before he was pushed away by the flustered redhead. Baka. You just don't say that kind of stuff out of nowhere, she said, trying to compose herself. Oh, sorry about that. Naruto apologized. But damn, I couldn't help it. Her scent is as intoxicating as Ura's, he thought before his eyes widened. Oh crap, I forgot about Ura. Is something wrong? Kaori asked, seeing how stiff he was. Kinda, I was supposed to look for my friend and got distracted. He explained. She is going to kill me. Ah, I see. Would this friend happen to be Ura-san? She asked curiously, getting a nod from the blonde. Yeah, chances are she'll think I ditched her or something. Damn, she's going to be pissed. Naruto sighed. Sorry Kaori, but I should probably get going. I suppose I understand, but don't be a stranger. Even if you decide to join a different club, that doesn't mean we can't be friends, alright? She asked with a smile. While she hoped he did join the club, she would accept if he chose another to join, but that didn't mean she didn't want to spend more time with him. He was good company compared to the other boys here. No problem. I'll see you around, Naruto said with a grin, happy that he made a new friend. Waving goodbye, he sprinted away, hoping to find his vampire friend. Kaori watched him go with before smiling to herself. I hope I meet up with him again. He was pretty nice, not half bad to look at either. If you're done ogling your boyfriend, then help me, Mushu drawled as he walked by carrying a bag of soil. Kaori blushed before glaring at her brother. He's not my boyfriend. I just thought he would make a good friend. And I totally believe you, Mushu countered in a monotone voice, not even sparing a glance at his younger sister. Alright, if I was a prideful vampire with a short fuse, where would I be? Naruto asked himself as he looked for answer. I would either be with my twin sister complaining about how pointless today is, or sitting by myself thinking about how pointless today was. He answered to himself with a sigh. While that was most likely the case, it still didn't tell him where Ura could be. Shrugging, he channeled his yoki into his nose to increase his sense of smell. He sniffed into the air and grinned when he smelled the familiar lavender scent of Ura. However, he frowned in confusion when he also smelled the strong scent of chlorine. That much chlorine can only come from a pool? Maybe the swimming club? He asked himself. He looked towards the direction of the scent and saw that it was in the same direction that those boys who wanted to go to the swimming club went. But why would she go there? That made no sense to him. Vampires were weak against water, so why on earth would she be at the school pool? Oh well, I better go see for myself, Naruto said before rushing towards the pool. As he got closer, he saw many boys wearing swimming trunks running away with scared looks on their faces. Well, that can't be good. Why is it always you two who attract trouble at this school? Ura groaned in annoyance. Ura and Omid were walking through the hallways when they heard about a commotion happening at the swimming club. Naturally, Omid was worried about Sukune and ran off hoping to save him. Ura sighed at her sister's recklessness before chasing after her. When they arrived, they saw that the swimming club members were actually mermaids who were draining the life force of everyone. And when it looked like they were about to drain Sukune, Omid acted without thought. Ignoring what harm the water could do to her, she ran towards the body of water hoping to save him. Omid, no! Ura shouted with wide eyes. What on earth was she thinking? Luckily, she was faster than her sister, so she was able to grab her arm, preventing her from reaching the pool. Ura-chan, let go! Omid shouted, trying to reach the pool, but Ura's grip was strong. No! What on earth are you thinking? She shot back, glaring at her sister. I'm trying to save Sukune, Omid said, trying to break free from her twin's hold. The moment you touch the water, it will be you who needs the saving. Think before you act, Ura scolded and pulling Omid back. Well, this is certainly entertaining, they heard Tamao say with her arms wrapped around a frightened Sukune as she looked at the vampires with a mocking smile. But really, why don't you two bloodsucker run along? It's not like you can do much, right? After all, everyone knows vampires can't swim. Vampires can't swim? Sukune thought with wide eyes. He remembered how uncomfortable Omid looked around the pool, and it suddenly made sense. That's some big talk coming from some low-class fish. Ura shot back with a glare. TCH, I could say the same about you. It's rather pathetic that such a strong monster is weak to something like water. Tamao countered, causing Ura's glare to harden. The mermaid smirked as she tightened her hold on Sukune. Such a nasty look you have. I'd be careful if I were you. I still have your friend, Sukune, Omid shouted in concern. Ura, we have to do something. Can't we just leave him be? It's his fault that he's in this predicament, Ura explained uncaringly, causing Sukune to gasp in disbelief. He knew that he and Ura weren't really friends, but he thought she cared enough to at least help him. Ura, Omid shouted, appalled. Oh fine, I'll help him. Ura sighed in annoyance. Really? What are you going to do? Tamao mocked as she raised her tail and splashed it against the water, sending a small wave towards Ura, who pushed Omid away before rolling to dodge it. Girls, the vampire looks thirsty. Why don't you give her a hand? Tamao ordered. The rest of the mermaids nodded before splashing water everywhere. Ura cursed as she dodged around to avoid getting splashed. Afraid to confront me head-on, so you resort to this? I should have expected this from a weakling like you. Ura taunted but winced as a few drops of water splashed against her face. Who cares? If it works, plain and simple, Tamao said with an uncaring shrug. But she yelped in pain when something slammed onto her head, causing her to go down. The next thing she knew, Sukune was ripped out of her grip and thrown out of the pool. Sorry Captain, but I can't let you hurt my friend. A voice said. Ura looked up and saw it was Naruto who freed Sukune and was now standing on top of the heads of two unconscious mermaids. Looks like you could use a can, Ura. I had everything under control. She shot back despite the feeling of relief she felt at his arrival. While she knew she was stronger than these fish, that didn't mean she wasn't wary about the water. Whatever. Naruto rolled his eyes before ducking in time to avoid a mermaid who lunged at him from behind. He jumped off the two mermaids he was using as a platform and grabbed the lunging one's tail. He spun around, and once he gained enough momentum he threw her with enough force to create a crater on impact. I don't know who he is, but I want him dead. Tamao shouted as the rest of the members launched into the air. Your only real advantage was your ability to fight in water, yet you jump out of it? The airborne Naruto mocked. Oh well, time to end this. Geppo, moonwalk. The fight, if you could call it that, was one-sided to say the least. The people on ground level watched as Naruto seemed to jump off the air as if it was a solid surface. With this ability to change his trajectory in mid-air, he easily maneuvered around the mermaids and landed hard blows that sent them crashing towards the ground, where they passed out on impact. Damn you! Tomoe shouted in anger as she lunged into the air, planning to bite his head off his shoulders. Her anger prevented her from seeing she was doing the same thing as her allies did, and just like them she would fail. Naruto saw her approached and kicked the air to sidestep her attack. Before she completely sailed past him and grabbed her tail before swinging her around. Ura, catch! Naruto shouted as he threw the mermaid towards the smirking vampire. Look at you now, as useless as a fish out of water. Know your place, she shouted as she delivered a kick strong enough to break Tamao's jaw. Unable to take the pain, the mermaid blacked out. Thank you so much for the help, Naruto-san. Omid thanked as she walked towards Naruto as he landed on the ground. No problem, Naruto said before the sound of a slap echoed across the area. Both turned to see Ura glaring at Sukune, who was holding his red cheek. Ow, what was that for? Sukune asked as he rubbed his sore cheek. He looked at her for an answer only to shiver under her glare. You're on very thin ice with me. She hissed, her anger visible to all. What? Sukune asked, taken aback. Ura's only response was to point at Omid, who stood by Naruto as they watched the scene unfold. Do you have any idea what you have done to her? She asked. Sukune opened his mouth to say something, but she continued before he could speak. Because you wanted to fool around in the water with those girls, you ignored her. You hurt her and made her doubt her vampire heritage. She already had to deal with inconsiderate humans that hurt her once, and I'll be damned before I let it happen again. You cared more about yourself and ignored her discomfort around the water. Buti didn't know. Sukune tried to reason. He took a glance at Omid and saw that she wasn't looking at him. Did his actions really hurt her? And you think that is an excuse? Ura asked. She took a quick glance around the room and saw that it was only the four of them left, other than the unconscious mermaids. You chose to stay at this school. The least you could do is learn a thing or two about different yokai. Ura leaned closer towards Sukune, her red eyes practically glowing as she spoke in a quiet but threatening voice. I will warn you once, Sukune. Omid is my most precious person, and I will not let you hurt her due to your ignorance. If you wish to continue being her friend, then you better set your priorities straight, or else. Without waiting for a response, she walked over to Omid and grabbed her arm and dragged her away. Naruto scratched the back of his head before glancing at the dejected human. He sighed before stuffing his hand in his pockets. Well damn, you ended up on Ura's bad side, and I wish you luck on your survival. Next day. So, you feel any better? Naruto asked as he and Ura walked through the halls. After chewing out Sukune, Ura left with her sister, and he hadn't seen her since. I am still annoyed at him, but I will be fine. She answered, causing him to nod. You might have been a bit too hard on the boy, but he needed to hear that. You were right about him being ignorant. Here ignorance can get him killed. Naruto said. I don't care if he gets himself killed. The only thing I care about is how he hurt Omid. Ura said a bit coldly. Obviously she was still mad at Sukune for depressing her sister. Not only that, but the pinkhead almost jumped in a pool of water to try and save him. Right, anyway we never found a club. Naruto pointed out, causing Ura to sigh. Great, so what are we supposed to do? She asked. She did not find any club that interested her. Ah, just the pair of students I was looking for. They heard from behind. They turned to see Sid walking towards them with a blonde-haired woman wearing glasses. The oddest thing though was her hair was shaped like cat ears and the tail she sported. Naruto, Ura, this is Nekonomiya-sensei. Hello. The two students said, bowing in greeting. Hello there, Sid-sensei was just telling me about you too. Nekonomiya said with a smile. So far you two are the only ones in my class who hasn't joined a club. Sid explained, causing the female teacher to nod. You see, I am the supervisor of the newspaper club and I thought I would come see if you two would be interested in joining. Nekonomiya added. Naruto and Ura looked at each other before shrugging. Not like we found anything better. Ura mused. I guess it could be fun. Naruto added, causing the cat-like teacher to smile in delight. Great, just sign your name here and I'll see you during our first meeting. Nekonomiya said as she handed them a clipboard. Got it, Naruto said as he grabbed the clipboard and signed his name. He took a glance at the other names and raised a brow. Well, I'll be. What are the chances of us joining the same club? What do you mean? Ura asked as she grabbed the clipboard and scanned the other names. Akashiya Omit, Aono Sukune, Karuno Kurumu. Well, this is a surprise. Ura said, signing her name as well. While she was surprised at seeing her sister's name, she was also pleased. And with that, both werewolf and vampire were official members of Yokai Academy's newspaper club.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.